Okay, good. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Sherborn Board of Selectmen meeting for September 4th, 2014. I'll ask our town administrator to read the agenda, please.
Thank you. First, we'll vote to approve or amend the agenda and add topics not reasonably anticipated by the chair 48 hours in advance. And then public comment period of about 10 minutes. And then tax classification hearing at 6:15, the consideration of the tax rate with the Board of Assessors. And then at 6:30, review of town's involvement at Leland Farms. And after that, under the town administrator report, we have consideration of appointments, consideration of recycling committee tax bill enclosure, upcoming meeting topics, selectmen reports and routine business, approval of minutes, and approval of the warrant, and set the next meeting.
Okay, does anybody have anything to add, Paul?
I'd like to ask for a moment of silence for Nancy Lavash, who is a long-term resident of the town and who had served on various town boards and committees, including the Democratic Town Committee. She also worked in the town clerk's office and did numerous other things. She passed away.
Okay, we'll do that now. I think that's a great idea, and anybody who knows Nancy knows how much she was dedicated to the town and all the meetings she went to and all the insightful and often funny comments that she had at those meetings. So if we could just pause for a moment to honor Nancy. Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks, Paul. That was a great idea. Anything else to add to the agenda?
No changes.
All right, do we have a motion?
So moved. Accept the agenda.
Okay, all in favor? The agenda is approved, and we're off to the races. Public comment is next, and we have 4 people who wanted to speak, and Harley Kaplan is first up. Harley, if you wouldn't mind going up to the microphone, please. And thanks for coming in.
I am Harley Kaplan from Maple Street in Sherborn, and I'd like to thank the Selectmen and Mr. Williams for putting up the recommendations on the website, on the town website. I really hope that more residents in the town will add to those recommendations or up for discussion. So I'd like to thank you for that. The second reason is that I would like to talk about those recommendations. I was here back in June, and I know that we're now going to be talking about or looking for town warrants to go on town meeting. And I think it's important that I have 4 recommendations for town warrants that I'd like the Selectmen not to approve, but to approve to have it on the town meeting. I think it should be open for debate between now and then. And those 4 items are: 1, I think we need to look at declaring a economic zone in the downtown area. Second, I'd like to have another town warrant for looking at establishing a housing production plan. Third, to look at also developing or the potential developing of the fields behind Ed's garage, Rose's garage. Look towards either a housing project there or some type of mercantile and housing project. And the 4th item is to recommend that we change the Board of Health laws for existing construction to match the state of Massachusetts rules. I think that will generate thousands and thousands of dollars of revenue for the town with no additional burden to the town. And it's time to change the archaic rules that we have for existing construction. So those are the 4 items that I'd like the Board of Selectmen to move to town warrants on. I'm going to ask this, I don't mean to come here and get your votes on it right now, but I am planning on coming back to find out whether or not you guys are going to move those items. And if not, I can get residents to move them, but I really prefer to have the Selectmen move it. Again, I'm not looking for your vote for them, because I haven't made up my mind whether they're good or bad, but it's time for the discussion to start. Thank you.
Thanks, Harley. And without responding to the merits of that, Harley, just as a procedural matter, We will be opening the warrant up, usually that's sometime late in the year after Thanksgiving typically, and that's when for the Springtown meeting, the warrant is open, and any citizen is welcome to submit an idea for the warrant, and we would ask people to bring language. If they're going to propose a warrant article, they should work with the town administrator to come up with language that is capable of being put on that warrant. And we'll have those discussions, and as you know from last year, there's a series of hearings that happens after a warrant article is proposed.
When, October, November?
I think, by November, we'll be talking about it. We'll probably schedule something, I think we schedule it maybe the end of October to open it after Thanksgiving and close it right before or early in the new year. I believe that's the cycle. Am I right about that? Yeah.
Just on the merits, could I suggest that the town administrator do a little bit of work on these? For example, I try to write them down quick, but the Board of Health changing the rules, that may be just a Board of Health issue and not a town meeting issue?
Sure.
I don't know.
So between now, maybe in the warrant, we'll get smarter on how
Let's
how
get
the
informed
process could work.
on the procedures, because they may not be town meeting articles, is what I'm saying. There may be other ways that these things are supposed to be done.
Okay, Mr. Taylor, I think you're next on public comment. Do you mind going up, or?
No, I just have a comment on the Board of Health rules. I'll get over here.
Sure, thanks, Elliot.
Elliot Taylor, 30 North Main Street, but you know that. I believe the Board of Health is going to have a hearing on their rules and regulations and possible changes coming up in the next few weeks.
17th
17th of September, correct? So,
will be taped.
so if you have any druthers on their rules and regulations, that would be the place to start. Now, my comments. I opened up a weekly newspaper that's distributed throughout Sherborn yesterday, and I found that they're planning a party at the Sherborn Inn September 12th. Now, that's a week from tomorrow. And it says on the lawn of the Sherborn Inn. And as an abutter across the street from the Sherborn Inn, I think this is an illegal party. Years ago, when Sherborn Inn was getting all of their permits, the town meeting voted no outdoor entertainment at the Sherborn Inn. And also, there was a 130-seat limit to the Sherborn Inn. We do have a little patio there, they have, well, I guess so. But to have this lawn party, I have no idea how many people they're expecting, and I think it's illegal, and I think before they have it, they should come to the various town boards and get, hopefully not get a permit for this party that I think is illegal. I've given you copies up there of this ad that was in the paper yesterday. And it just says, from 7 to 10 p.m., which is after dark, and join the Friends of Sherborn Library for an evening, guaranteed to be lots of fun. Well, I don't know. And just what kind of entertainment there might be there, I don't know. Or are they just going to sit there and stare at each other for 3 hours? I don't know.
So this is, the library party is what, September 12th, 7 to 10?
A week from
Okay.
tomorrow night
Okay, at the Sherborn Inn.
at the Sherborn Inn on the lawn.
Okay.
And all I can do is just hope and pray that we have 3 inches of rain. But I am opposed to it. We have a bylaw that says it will not happen, but I guess I'm the only one that has to obey the laws. Thank you.
Thanks, Elliot. Okay, up next, George Shea, do you have a comment? You're waving. I'll wave back. And Tim Morrissey, Fire Chief. Thanks, Chief. Hi.
I thought with the end of the summer upon us, almost, although it finally feels like summer instead of spring, that I'd just give a little update of what's been going on over the summer period. For the fire department, it's been fairly quiet, which is good, with many people obviously leaving for vacation and such. But we did get a few tasks done, and we still have some other projects still in the works. Over on Perry Street, for the residents up in that area, the tanks have been out of service for a period of time due to leaking. One of the tanks had leaked. So we were able to get a gentleman in from Holliston, who owns the company, came in, tightened up the tanks, sealed them, and with the help of CMD, we were able to fix one of the pipes leading out to the street to the hydrant. So for the residents up in that area, we appreciate the patience you've had with us over the past 2 or 3 weeks. We've had the road opened up over there where the pipes were so that we could get the proper fittings, get it all tightened back up again. We ran the tests on it. It's all filled up. CM&D is planting some ryegrass on top of the dirt, and you have the fire protection back for the Perry Street area. So that covers the northwest corner of town over in that area. Our next project is over on Forest and Farm. Again, these are monies that have been allocated prior to probably 2 years ago by town for the maintenance of the fire hydrant systems. So first part of that took care of the Perry Street. Right now we're at Farm and Forest Street with that dry hydrant. It's the board, there's a little reminder to the board, the pipe goes from Farm Pond all the way to the old Medfield State Hospital out there, and that's about a 100-year-old pipe. So we've been able to bring in an engineer out of Medfield. We brought in some tools from Framingham Public Works to be able to spot where the pipe is in the ground, find out its depth, which appears to be about 18 feet at that intersection. Concern is, and you've probably heard in the past, is if that pipe were to suffer a fracture, especially farther downstream towards the Charles River, that we could have an inadvertent drop in the water level of Farm Pond, because there'd be nothing to stop it. It would just flow until it reached an equal level. So part of our plans is to get that fire hydrant back into service by capping that pipe farther down on the other side of Forest Street, so that the pipe will just be solely for the fire hydrant. The remainder of that pipe would be just left in the ground. At this point, there's nobody servicing it. It's not going anywhere except in the ground.
They did have that capped at the Medfield line by agreement with
Right.
DCAM.
Right. We just want to make sure on our side of things that, God forbid, that 100-year-old pipe breaks or something, that we don't have an emergency or people start noticing.
There goes Farm Pond.
There goes Farm Pond, right? We don't want that.
So, Chief, is this a pipe you use as a dry hydrant? Is that what you're telling us?
Right now, that's all it is. It comes from the old pump house, comes underground, and it runs out to that location, and then we're able to draw the water for it in an emergency.
Okay.
The HVAC project that is in its last stages, we hope. It seems to be progressing well. We're waiting for one more compressor to be installed. Them have been up in the attic this week, and the sweltering temperatures finishing some of the duct work.
It'll be done just in time for winter, right?
You bet, you bet. But with the whole project being completed, we really do hope for savings. I mean, we have a much more efficient gas boiler in the firehouse. We've insulated the roof back in the springtime. Now we're going to have ductwork that won't leak. So both in the wintertime and in the summertime, we should be running efficient systems. So that's going to be a savings to the town. I just want to make a quick reminder that September is Emergency Preparedness Month, and this nationally, the state of Massachusetts, through Massachusetts Emergency Management, really puts a lot of information out online. You may even see television commercials on some of the local television stations. Their big theme this year, and I'm putting it very simply, is just to have a plan. Have a plan in your own home for the what-ifs. In our location, you probably heard me say this before, it's usually weather emergencies, either in the summertime with some severe thunderstorms where we lose power, maybe a road or two is closed because the trees come down, and of course our fun in the sun, winter snowstorms, where you may have a couple of days without power. You may have limited means of getting around because the roads aren't totally clear because we have trees and wires down. Make sure you have some type of plan, make sure you have some type of easy preparedness rations that you can keep in your home and be able to use. It doesn't mean a survivalist closet that, to store for a month. You need about 3 days worth of water, non-perishables, and some clothing to wear. Lastly, in coordination with the police department, and especially with Lieutenant Bento, we've put into effect a new notification system in the town through an emergency management grant. It's called Code Red. We encourage the residents of town to go to the town's website, and you'll see on the lower right-hand corner a Code Red symbol. You click on that symbol, it takes about 90 seconds to fill out a very quick sign-up sheet. And what this Code Red notification system allows is for us to get messages to each and every resident of town for all types of emergencies, from the simple, if we wanted to send something out that a road is closed because we're going to have the parade on Memorial Day, to, just as I mentioned in previous, a snowstorm, and we really encourage people to stay in town, in home, because this road's closed, this road's closed, this road's closed. It also has the ability to tailor it, so we can send it to one person in town, or we can send it to every person in town. So if we have a limited emergency, we can just send it to people on that street. It takes 90 seconds, as I mentioned. We did it with the Council on Aging today at their drop-in luncheon. We were able to sign up about a dozen different residents. We want you to go on it, and we want you to tell your neighbors about it and get them to sign up on it, because the better the communication is in town, the more information we can get out to you, the easier it is for you to get around town and to be aware of what's going on, both in the public safety side and maybe some other activities that we can also put into this. So that's our big push right now for the next few months, is to get everybody involved. We'll probably also show up on Election Day with a computer and a little table, and if people want to sign up there, come find myself or one of the police officers.
That's great.
Can we get a brief summary of that up on the website with a link to
Most
make it
definitely.
easier for people to do
Well,
that?
actually, I believe if you on the top of the website, it's red, it says Code Red notification. You click on that, there is a write-up about it, but on the lower right-hand corner is your sign-up,
And that's on the town's website?
and that's on the town website.
Okay.
Great.
So that should answer most questions. Again, if you have any questions, call the firehouse, call the police station. We'd be more than happy to talk with anybody.
Great update. Thank you.
Could we arrange to have the chief come in periodically to update us,
Absolutely.
put it as an agenda item?
Yeah,
So that
that's
would
a
be
great
good,
idea.
so we can be prepared,
Yeah.
and we'll have a bigger audience for you,
I think I got a pretty good audience tonight.
Oh, plus hundreds watching at home, so I think
That's
you're
right.
good.
Millions.
Yeah. See you. Thank you, Chief. Okay, so next agenda item is a tax classification hearing for consideration of the tax rate, and if the folks from the Board of Assessors could come up to the table. And David, do we have to read anything for this hearing? Is there a notice or anything that we need to read?
For notice of the hearing?
Yes.
I don't have it.
I have the notice.
You have it. Thank you.
Should read it as published.
I think we should read it, yeah, if we've got it. Thanks, Sean. Yeah, great. Okay. And this is a legal notice, Town of Sherborn, public hearing that was published in the Dover Sherborn tab on August 28th. The Sherborn Board of Selectmen will hold a public hearing on Thursday, September 4th, 2014, at 6:15 p.m. in the Selectmen's Meeting Room, Town Hall, 19 Washington Street, Sherborn. The central issue to be discussed during this tax classification hearing is whether all 5 classes of property, residential, open space, commercial, industrial, and personal, shall be taxed at the same rate or at different rates for fiscal year 2015. Interested taxpayers are urged to attend the hearing. Written and oral statements from interested taxpayers will be accepted and taken into consideration at the hearing, and it's filed by the Sherborn Board of Assessors. Thank you. So, yeah, if you could just give your name for the record, and then the table is yours.
Thank you. Yvonne Remillard, I am the Director of Assessing. I'm the woman in the office, along with my very efficient assistant, Amy Davidson. And I will be giving my standard annual report to the Board of Selectmen on the tax rate. Before I begin, I'd like to say that I gave this report to you last Tuesday, and I have kept the format that you seem to like. The information in the report is mostly given as a courtesy to you. It's really the back 2 pages that you need to focus on in determining if you're going to split the rate or not. And that's really what the purpose of this meeting is. The selectmen are the ones responsible to determine whether the town is going to have a split rate or not. It is the Department of Revenue who certifies the tax rate. So I will begin. Let's see. This is fiscal year 15, and I'm starting on page 3. In fiscal year 15, the town data and values have been affected by the following items. This was a recertification year. And if you don't know what that is, every 3 years the Board of Assessors gets audited by the Department of Revenue, and they come in and look at our operations and make sure we're doing things the way we're supposed to be doing. And so our values can change a little bit more than maybe in an interim year. Things are always scrutinized, but we have another level of scrutiny every 3 years. So this was a recert year. On page 4, we had new growth affect our tax levy. This year we had a total new growth value of $172,651. And mostly due to a residential. As you can see, 82% of that is residential growth. We had practically no, in fact, we had no commercial growth. The growth that you see listed on there comes all from personal property. And of course, I always give you a history within this report on what new growth has been over the last couple of years. Taxable status changes. We can lose or gain dollars when a change in taxable status occurs. We had 2 properties go into Chapter 61 and 61A, and those were effective for this fiscal year, and we had 3 chapter parcels that came out of classification for fiscal year 15. Item D is our total taxable value. We're slightly over $1.1 billion. Our percentages really don't change that much. I give you a further detail on page 6, but the residential percentage is always hovering around 95, where our commercial is always hovering between 4 and 5. Okay, the tax levy on page 5. I won't bore you with this because a lot of this is town meeting, but basically town taxpayers voted appropriations over $27 million. When you add the things in, like state charges, and you take out the revenue that the town receives, our adopted budget requires a levy amount of $22,805,000 and change. It's about an increase of 2.9% over last year. This leaves an excess levy of $49,226.80. Now, I'm going to repeat that because part of my job tonight is to inform you of our excess levy capacity, which is $49,226.80. I then give you the levy limit. There was no override, but the levy is affected by last year's levy. You add on 2.5%, then you add on new growth. You would also then add on any budgetary overrides. We did not have any this year, and we haven't for the last several years, but we did have debt. So that gets added on, and that comes up with your maximum permitted levy, and our levy falls under that by that $49,226.80. On page 6, I give you a recap of the taxable assessed values from 2009 to 2015. Our projected tax rate for fiscal year 15 is $20.32. It is very stable since last year's tax rate was $20.34. And basically what that means is that the values, the overall town values, have changed by about what the budget has changed. So the budget has gone up about 3%, so have the values, and thus you have a stable tax rate. Okay. This is the important part about deciding whether you are going to split the rate or not. If you vote a uniform or single tax rate, I ask that you adopt a residential factor of 1. Okay, but you are allowed to split the rate. So I give you some analyses in helping you to make that determination. I list all of our surrounding towns: Ashland, Dover, Framingham, Holliston, Medfield, Millis, Natick, and Sherborn, of course, is on the list. The only town that continues to split the rate is Framingham. They have a residential percentage of under 60%. Now, if you remember from the beginning of the conversation, my presentation, our residential percentage here in Sherborn always hovers around 95%. So you can see Framingham has a lot heavier commercial base than Sherborn. Natick has a residential base of right under 77%, and they choose not to split the rate. They have a single tax rate. Sherborn has always had a single tax rate, and this is a decision every year. You could choose to split the tax rate, and then next year the Board of Selectmen could choose not to choose the tax rate. That's why we have to go through this process every single year. I give you the overall scenarios of what our commercial, industrial, and personal properties' share of the levy is. And then I also list what their shift would be with a 10%, 25%, and 50% shifts. The key example is on the back page 8, is really the individual scenario that you can see what happens to the tax bills. Our new single-family average is $724,400. So I listed a home for $725,000. So with a $725,000 residential and commercial having a single tax rate, their tax bill would be $14,732. If you split the rate 10%, the residential average tax bill would go down $80, but the commercial tax bill would go up almost $1,500. And of course, this increases as you go up. The maximum allowed shift is 50%. So, with a 50% shift, the residents would be saving $362, while the commercial would have to pay an additional $7,373. Basically, it's about a nickel savings for every dollar put onto the commercial properties. In conclusion, the Board of Assessors again recommends to maintain the single tax rate for fiscal year 15. If you have any questions?
I do. Well, first I want to commend you for what a great job you do, both on these reports and generally.
Thank you.
Thank you
Thank you.
for everything you do. Do we have members of the Board of Assessors here today?
Yes, Jean Rosso, my chair, is here.
And so the Board of Assessors have met and they voted to recommend keeping a single rate, correct?
Yes, Paul. Says this right here in the report.
Make an observation that the new growth is the highest it's been in 5 years, in total, which I think is good news for the town. Things are starting to happen here in Sherborn. When I was at a meeting with at the State House, the administration is pushing job creation and all of that. And I was handed a informational guideline release relating to another tax shift that's not discussed in your report. This is for small commercial exemptions, which if the Board of Selectmen vote, then the assessors apply the exemption to reduce the taxable valuation of property before setting the tax rate in the same manner as the residential exemption. The small commercial exemption lowers taxes on parcels occupied by small businesses and shifts those taxes to other commercial and industrial taxpayers. The message I was getting was that a lot of economic growth in Massachusetts is coming from small operations, people working with 1 or 2 employees and the like. And I wonder if the assessors have a position on that shift.
Would that apply with a unitary rate? If it shifts the burden to other commercial and industrial properties, it implies that you'd have to have a split rate for that to make any difference.
I think you can do it just for this without adopting any of the other provisions.
So, but if you did that, then you'd be shifting it to residential taxpayers.
No, you shift it among commercial,
You'd shift it among commercial,
yes.
and they'd still pay the unitary rate.
What I read here is the small commercial exemption lowers taxes on parcels occupied by small businesses and shifts those taxes to other commercial and industrial taxpayers. So somebody like,
You would have a different rate. Yeah, you would have a, I'm sorry, did you want to?
What is the definition of a small commercial business?
Yeah,
We don't have any
the
large.
problem is that you can do something like, we have very few to begin with. The thing too is if you do that, they still have to fill out the forms of lists, they still have to file every year, and if they by chance fell under the small exemption category one year, they might not next year. It can be very confusing if they have to pay a bill or not. Because that line, where do you draw the line? 5,000, 10,000, 15,000? I mean, most of the personal property, and that's what that's what this really goes to, is the personal property. Most of that is actually the utilities. We don't have too many of our offices downtown with our 1 or 2 people that really pay an exorbitant bill. Their bill might be $40 a year.
well, that's what I was told. Well,
Right, it's not that
The
much.
information I was given
Right.
was that in a community like Sherborn, what this would do would be to have N-Star pay more money. And the small
You would-
startup company that's under $1 million is what it says in this thing from DOR. The small startup company pays less and gives that startup some encouragement and therefore helps the economy, helps employment.
But the problem with if you adopted something like under $1 million, you would eliminate like all your cell phone companies, not N-Star or Verizon, but we have a lot of other companies, the cell companies that are assessed under $1 million, and
Well, that's the max.
we get some good revenue from that. I mean, it's totally
Are your
up.
Chapter 61s in commercial or industrial? Where do you classify those?
They're in commercial, yeah, but this really refers to a personal,
Is that what Paul's talking about?
yeah.
It's hard to make a decision on this or even discuss it intelligently without the same information that Paul's reading from.
It's sole proprietorships and partnerships for small commercial enterprises.
Yeah, it's really it's the,
Which would, if I hear that, based on what you're doing, would include the Chapter 61s. Just simpleton, because we don't know enough about what he's
Well, they're already
looking at.
exempt though, right, or they're already reduced.
Well,
no,
yeah,
they fall
but-
under commercial, they're a commercial
Yeah.
category.
Yeah.
But I believe what he refers to is really not, is the small commercial exemption comes with the personal property tax, not really the
Oh, okay.
commercial end of it. So,
So the personal property related to commercial
Right.
enterprises as
Yeah.
defined, which could include Chapter 61 properties.
We
But
have,
also cell
yeah.
towers and all that stuff. yeah,
right,
cell
so
companies.
we have, I mean, there's, we only have about 64 accounts, and the big ones are the utilities and the cell phone companies. And most of your people that only have one or two people in the office pay a very small tax already. I mean, if you'd like, I can certainly do an analysis for you and tell you.
I'm just looking at this. It says eligible small businesses are defined as those having an average annual employment of no more than 10 persons at all locations during the prior calendar year. And it says the legislation allows local assessors to establish the eligibility of sole proprietorships and partnerships for the small commercial exemption, which is one of the property tax classification options available to communities when setting the annual property tax rate. Under that option, the Board of Selectmen or mayor, with the approval of the City Council, may exempt up to 10% of the value of Class 3 commercial parcels occupied by qualifying small businesses. Again, just the thought was, this is coming from the state, so it's not local at all, but the idea
Right.
is what can we do to increase the economy in the state, increase jobs? And this was supposed to be a way to give a little boost. And I was told that for small communities, basically your biggest commercial property taxpayers will be things like the utilities, like NSTAR, whatnot. So this has
Right.
the way of shifting taxes from a small operation to NSTAR. And
And the rest of the taxpayers, right?
no, just in the commercial category.
Just within the commercial category.
Yeah.
So it's a shift within
It's within,
that category 3 that she's got, Class 3.
from what I'm reading here. Well, just something to think about, maybe
next
for
time.
next year.
Yeah, I mean, if there's I can certainly run an analysis and tell you how it would affect for next year, and you can make a determination. Of
Doesn't-
course, there wouldn't be too many of them.
Doesn't look like that's new
It's 2,000.
legislation.
No.
It's 2000, so it's just
Right.
something that the
14 years
state
old.
is pushing at this point, is that what you're saying?
Well, yeah, we went through a recession. We're on the way out. We want to increase jobs. We want to have the economy booming here in the Commonwealth. And so what can local communities do? One of the things local communities can do is to do this 10% shift within the commercial category to support small, under 10 employee.
I have a comment on that. If you're going to shift to a company like NSTAR, it's going to fall back on our electricity bills. We're going to be paying it in the long run, just like when you tax poles. If you go through all the,
Your
pay so much
Verizon
to
bill.
NSTAR for your electricity, if you go through all the other, or it's Verizon, whatever it is, but this is Verizon.
It's Verizon.
There is a little line in there, and we pay so much each tax bill, or each bill from Verizon, to cover the cost that the town is charging them for their poles. I mean, this would be just another reason to add to our monthly bills for Verizon.
I don't even know if this is before us for a decision today. I think Paul's just making a suggestion as far as something to look at for the future. Am I right, Paul?
Well, yeah, I guess, yes.
Yes, I'm happy to do that for you. Absolutely.
Okay. Do we have, Peter, you have questions?
Yeah, if I could, a couple of comments and questions. On the new growth, so when we do the model for budgeting, and Ruth used 150, you guys give her 150, but actually it's 172, so there's 22 grand of real benefit, if you will, that goes into that,
The levy
the levy
limit.
limit and the unused levy. You could argue falls to that unused
It
levy
does.
amount, right?
Yes, it does.
And I don't think I'll ever fully appreciate a good or bad unused levy, but I don't want to know that now, okay? So I know that's important to you. I don't quite get there. One of the things that jumps out at me, though, is looking at item F in on the last page, where you show the residential single-family home average values from 2009 through 2015, and the related average tax bills on those homes. And we see the values in 2009 at 750, and in 2015 at 724. So we see it going down or remaining flat in that period. And of course, the taxes, where average tax bill was 12,400 and plus, is now 14,720. So it's gone up 18% over the 6 years. That's about 3% a year. It's just, when you see it like that, you go, huh. So that leads me to, even though you're asking us about the single rate, that's all we're going to decide on. We're not deciding on the rate itself. But if I could ask about the rate, okay? And the question is, I'm sure you've heard from selectmen, you've probably heard from advisory, you've heard from real estate agents, you hear from others that say, the $20 threshold that we've breached last year and we're still above is a killer. The question I have, is there any flexibility in the valuation process? So part of that, I'd asked these guys at the end of the table here for a little analysis of what our selling prices were over the last 2 fiscal years versus the assessed values on the 100 or so properties that probably sold in that 2-year period. I don't have that yet, but the question is, if there is flexibility, if I look at it and I say, geez, I would love to see a tax rate under $20, and to get there with what we have to pay or what the assessment is, what the levy is, you can do that with a 2%, less than a 2% increase in valuation. And so the question is there flexibility in that? You know, without being crazy, without still being somewhat conservative. I know you like to be conservative. You like to come in within a certain range that the state DOR says is comfortable when they certify the rate. So just like to have a little better understanding of why we can't be more flexible on that.
Well, first of all, we are regulated by the Department of Revenue, and the information that you asked for today from David actually should have been asked to me. And the two things that you asked for don't correlate. Okay, you don't have a sale that occurs in fiscal year 13 that affects fiscal year 13 values. Fiscal year 15 is actually reflects the calendar year sales that occurred in 13. Okay, so assessments are behind.
Yep.
Yes, we do like to be slightly on the conservative side. However, I did tell you this was a recertification year. Recertification is not conservative. They expect us to come in at 100% and very close to that. And so we have to go by their guidelines, okay? To get that additional 2%, I would have been over-assessing.
Over 100%.
Yeah, and that, Peter, will end you up in court.
Yeah.
Okay, I can't over-assess, even though we are allowed to go up to 10% over, we don't like to do that,
Yeah.
because, you know, you don't know what the next year is going to bring, and it's just, it's better to be slightly under than slightly over. So, no, the Board of Assessors scrutinizes those values and those sales and those assessments every single year. And this year, for fiscal year 15, we are even more scrutinized. So, and yes, I have heard that from realtors and people that, oh, the $20 is just, I mean, the $20 is such a high tax rate. If you looked at Holliston's
saw that.
catching up to this. They're at 1988, and that was last year. I don't know what they're coming in for at fiscal year 15.
Dover to 13.
You know, so, you know, yeah, well, Dover's moving up. They used to be around 11, so, I mean, now they're at 13. But, you know, there's only so much, you know,
I just had to
that
ask
you
the
can
question.
do.
And
Yes.
the analysis that I wanted to get was just, I
Yeah.
don't know what it was going to
But
tell me. but-
yeah, I don't know what it was going to tell you either, because it didn't really impact what you were
No, I'm
doing
not
here
looking for
tonight.
that, yeah.
And the other thing too, Peter, is that you were asking for sales that occurred in 13 and then the assessments for fiscal year 13. And those assessments for fiscal year 13 are based on sales that occurred in calendar year 11.
Ah.
You know what I mean?
So I get further educated in looking at that stuff. There you
I've
go.
always welcomed you to come
I
into
understand.
my office and to get further
Trying to leverage
educated.
off of other resources.
But it sounds like Peter would be open to a higher assessment on his own
He
property.
absolutely
There you
would.
go, yeah. Bring it
Yes.
on.
Yes, yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I mean, and the other thing too, which I always tell people is, our growth is up this year, which is a good thing, but, there is not a lot of growth in this town, and there's not a lot of commercial in this town.
Yvonne, when you say the growth is up this year, is that reflective of 13, or is that actually current year growth?
That is reflective as what occurred in calendar year 13, yes. So it's all the building that occurred prior to 1/1/14.
Gotcha, okay.
So all the stuff that's going on now in 14, that will go on, and it looks like another good year will actually go on for fiscal year 16.
Great.
So,
Thanks.
and I just want to point out with the new growth, that when we do the budget, I have a pretty good handle on what residential is going to be at budget time. I don't know for personal property, because a lot of those personal property returns don't come in they're not due till March 1st. I don't get the utilities until May and June, and by then, you guys are done, town meeting's over. And that's where a lot of that personal property growth comes from, is the utilities that we don't get later. So I do my best guess. And yes, you're right, it comes out in the excess levy capacity. But the excess levy capacity raises your levy limit for the next year.
Yes.
So it's not completely gone.
Okay, so
If you want to use it, so, sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, this is a public hearing, so if anybody from the public has something they want to say, if they could raise their hand and be recognized. Alex?
You're talking about split rates or just
The question at this hearing is whether to have a split rate or to do what we always have done, is have a unitary rate.
Well, I support the status quo, and I'll tell you why. Number one, there isn't a lot of commercial property in town. Most of the small businesses are pretty well tapped out. Not a lot of room to grow and do that. The other side of it, for those of us with ag land 61A, 61B, would fall on the commercial side, the tax rate. And for the agricultural part of that, it's a hardship. Right now, the taxes that we pay is based on production of what we grow. And those incomes are challenged just like everybody else. A dramatic increase in the taxes I pay would be very detrimental to my business. So I consider to keep the single rate.
Okay, anybody else have any comments on taxation, unitary taxation? Okay, do we have a motion?
I would move to keep a single rate, as recommended by the assessors.
Second.
Okay, do we have any further discussion on the board?
Just that I've always followed the recommendations of the assessors. See no reason not to do it this year.
Okay, so can we have a vote? All in favor of maintaining the unitary rate, single rate? Aye. Okay, 3-0, thanks, Yvonne.
Thank you.
Thanks, Gene.
Thanks, Yvonne.
What do you need me to sign this and tell me, okay, tell me where? On these lines, okay.
I always learn from you, Yvonne.
You got all his boats, right?
Yeah, Situate gets those. Thanks so much, Yvonne.
Thank you.
Great, thanks.
See you next year.
See you next year.
Right,
Yeah.
okay.
Change the wording just to see if we catch it.
All right, so the next item, and we're a little bit behind schedule, and I don't know that this is going to improve things, is a review of the town's involvement at Leland Farms. I know there's a lot of, seems to be a lot of different opinions about what this proceeding is. This is not a hearing, this is a discussion by the Board of Selectmen of the relationship between the town and Leland Farms, focusing on issues like the financial relationships and the town's involvement in the management, if any, of the development, and as part of that, there's been a lot of review of the background information, the formation documents for this development, and some of the history of those things. So I would like to structure this discussion at the board level in this way, which is to have a presentation and allow us to ask questions about the background and the history of the development from, from the beginning to now. There then would be a discussion of the financial implications, in other words, the relationship between the town and Leland Farms in a financial sense, and we would take input on that topic only from the members of the public here, and then we would have a discussion about the relationship and the structure as it pertains to town's involvement with the organization, the corporate structure of the development, and then we would take comment on that subject as well as questions on that subject. On the structural question, we're not talking about individuals or particular issues, and we're not talking about the operations internal to Leland Farms. That's private business, and that's not something that the Board of Selectmen has in front of it. And then we'll have some wrap-up and probably I'm sure we'll have some action items for a future discussion that'll kind of hone in on the things we need to hone in on. But as far as the background goes, I know George Shea, I know, had volunteered to review some documents and come up to speed on some of these issues. I know our town administrator has also come up to speed. All the members of the Board of Selectmen have had about a 2-inch thick pack of documents to plow through concerning the development. And we also have not only folks from Leland Farms here, but also some of the people who were involved in the creation of that development and the entities that went into that. David, I don't know if maybe the best thing to do is to have you talk about what it is you've learned and kind of set the stage for a discussion by describing what what this is for folks who may not know how it got started and the procedural history. Paul, you were very involved also. I know you may have things to add to that as well.
I just want to make a disclosure under 268. I think I am the Sherborn Housing Corporation. I think I'm the clerk of the corporation, or I recall being the clerk of the corporation, and I think the other officers resigned, and I didn't want to dissolve the corporation, so when it became inactive, but I would suspect that I'm probably the surviving member of the board.
I didn't see any documents to that effect. In fact, the last clerk that was of record is Rick Novak, who was the clerk in 2003 when the last documents were filed with the state.
Then I may be a director.
You may have been a member of the corporation. I think at one point you were an officer, but I think it predates the 2003 event. I think that information actually, Paul, is in this package, if I'm not.
There was a whole bunch of stuff I got when I arrived here today that I didn't have a chance to read, but my recollection was that I was both an officer and a director of the corporation for a long time.
Yeah, I mean, this is not, if I look at the November 2003, I know you were involved in discussions on the Board of Selectmen in 2004 and 2005 that are reflected in the minutes. There was no disclosure at that time, so I suspect you were not an officer at that time, or you probably would have disclosed then. And if you weren't an officer then, unless you've been appointed since, you probably aren't an officer now.
I would have only made a disclosure if the corporation would have been an issue, but
I think it was to accept a gift from the corporation was the issue at that time. But in any case, it's fine. I mean, you've made your disclosure.
Just disclosing it for
Yeah. I just think in terms of fitting all the pieces together, that could be an important piece of the puzzle if we, find out what ongoing involvement people have had with that corporation, which appears to have been, its last activity was 2003.
Yes, but we had a meeting here, and the issue was, do we dissolve the corporation or not? And I recall the decision made was not to dissolve the corporation. Simply not file any further paperwork, let it go into dormancy, but that one of us would be around to revive it if we needed to.
Okay, and that's reflected somewhat in the documentation that we have, and maybe there's other documentation out there that we haven't found yet. So David, do you want to describe,
Yeah, I
sort
mean,
of synthesize and bring us up to speed, which will put some of Paul's comments in context too, I
okay.
think.
Instead of reading the whole summary, from my understanding is that the Selectmen had appointed a Sherborn Housing Partnership back before 2000. And that partnership spun off this Sherborn Community Housing Corporation, referred to as SCHC. And then the SCHC entered into a lease of the land with the town of Sherborn, or the Board of Selectmen at that time. And then the SCHC created a trust association to self-manage the Leland Farms condominium trust, and turn that over from SCHC to the trust association once a certain occupancy limit was reached at Leland Farms. So that all happened. So the ground lease was signed between the town of Sherborn and the Community Housing Corporation in January 1999. So the first amount due to be paid to the town by the trust association would have been what I've figured is February 2000. And you can refer to the documents of the master deed and the declaration of trust that were in effect at that time. Then around 2003, the Sherborn Community Housing Corporation voted to reduce its membership, the board of directors to reduce down to 1. And at that time, there was a transfer of the capital funds that they had, which was around $40,000. Transferred that over to the town, and I think we confirmed today that that was received by the Selectmen in 2005.
Who's the one director?
We haven't found a document that specifies who that director is.
That's the problem, I think that's me.
If it is, it's not of record, Paul. It's the thing, if it is, that would be great to know that, because then it kind of brings some other things into focus, but
There's no document that
you know,
shows
if
who
you have a
that
document at home or any
person
place,
was
Paul, that would
voted, or
reflect that, that would be, or in your office, or car, tractor, any place.
The other thing I would add to this is that we created the corporation in part by filing with the Secretary of State, but we had a special home rule petition to the legislature, and there was a special act that defines the corporation, its powers, its duties, its responsibility, its relationship to the Board of Selectmen, and all those things.
That's why you wanted to keep it in effect, right?
Yes.
Yeah. And that shows up in some minutes here also.
I'm looking for the special act in the papers.
I'm not
that
sure the
was just
special
handed.
act
I
was
haven't seen
in
a special
in the
act.
papers. All right, so
I didn't know anything about the special.
David, are you through your summary? or-
I was just going to say that there was an annual report continued to be filed till around 2009 with
Not
the
according to
Secretary
the
of State.
Secretary of State's office. The last report they have on record available online is 2003.
So I thought the Secretary of State, it became inactive in 2012.
That's also reflected on the website. I didn't see any other articles, David, at least
So
not
I was
any
going by
available.
the assumption that it goes inactive after the 2 years of non-filing.
Yeah,
So-
no, I think they,
so there was
maybe
nothing
we're
filed.
behind that. My understanding is nothing was filed after 2003.
Okay,
But again, we're still piecing facts together.
right. Yeah, so there was a review last year by the town accountant and the treasurer about obligations from Leland Farms to pay into this maintenance fee. The monthly maintenance fee. And that was reconciled, and that's been paid up to date, and it's been being paid monthly. There was a inflator of consumer price index inflator that was supposed to have taken effect annually. That has not ever been adjusted to increase that monthly payment, so it's always been monthly payments since the beginning. The other item was the base rent. There's not been anything paid to the town to go into the general fund under that base rent of the ground lease.
Okay, and so we're kind of slipping over into the financial issues, but if we have more on the background, if anybody else has any And George, I know you looked at a lot of these documents. Did you have anything to add on what David said based on what you were able to find?
What I found is consistent with David just indicated. I have no information relative to the status of the corporation.
Okay.
And I have no information relative to the resignation of any of the officers, and I have no information relative to the current status of
Okay.
the corporation.
That's helpful. And Bob, I know you and I communicated earlier. You said you didn't have anything really to add on that either, or? This is Bob Delaney, who at one point was the president of the corporation.
I was given authority during the building process, to start the building process. Julie Lovell, who I'm not sure is still a resident of the town, but she was the moving force behind getting this established. Our then Congressman Barney Frank was very helpful in us getting well, it started out as $500,000, ended up more, and which was fortunate because we ran into the ledge over there. But the rent that I think we established for the 99-year lease was only $1.
It was $1,000, according to the lease.
I
2011, yeah.
I remember $1.
Definitely.
My memory's not great, so, but I thought it was just $1.
Yeah, no, we have that lease. That's,
You do?
yes, yep.
Okay, well, okay. And I concur with the $40,000 figure that David mentioned. However, as I mentioned to you in my email, the purpose of giving that over to the town was to benefit Leland Farms' unexpected expenses, not to be used for any other purpose, but I don't think we had control over that or what the town could do once we turned it over. But it seemed to be a reasonable thing to do since we came out with a surplus, which was kind of surprising, but mostly due to Mary Ann Clancy as a realtor, who was able to sell the market rates at a better price than we had expected. And so we and should be very grateful to her. But my responsibilities, which started when Paul and Warren Wheelwright and Jim Norton were selectmen after I had just gotten off the board of selectmen. They asked me if I would be responsible for the building committee, which I was. And the building committee then turned around and gave me authority to make the decisions basically on my own without having to get everybody together and cross the T's and dot the I's. And it was a fairly long process. And I more than that, I'm fuzzy on.
No, thank you. That's helpful. That's almost the precursor to the
That's right.
issues we're discussing with the later corporation. So I think now, David, you had outlined a couple of the financial issues. Bob just mentioned one, but it sounds like we're aware of at least three, maybe more.
Yeah, I'm a little confused, but based on what I read that you wrote up, I think there's the base rent, and I think you had prepared something earlier, David, back in mid-August that outlines it. There was additional rent, the purpose for which was to build and maintain the water well and the septic. And so I know that the town pays on behalf out of the, I won't go there yet. The additional rent was for the well and the septic, okay? And then separately is this maintenance reserve fund, which is the $450 a month to be adjusted by CPI each year, for maintenance, repair, replacement of facilities and roadways. That's how I read it in the ground lease, which is slightly different than what you described. And it seems to me that somehow, I don't know who or how or whatever, but decisions have been made in the town before I got involved at this level such that we wind up, from what I've seen, we've used monies received from the monthly payments, which, when I first got on the board, were in arrears, but they got caught up. And those payments have been used to pay the, what is it, Slosby, whoever it is that does the well. No, they're the management company.
I think it's
Whitewater, I'm sorry, Whitewater. But what I'm saying is that those funds, I don't read that the maintenance reserve fund's purpose is for well and septic. That's additional rent.
I'm going to
So-
suggest maybe we can
so
take
we-
one,
so-
sort of one bucket at a time.
Okay, so I'm just,
And sort of exhaust that bucket and then go on
Okay.
to the next one, because you're throwing a lot of things in here. But I think the most straightforward one might be the annual rent. And, David, that's $1,011 a year
It was $1,011 a year, which I think was basically,
pursuant to the ground lease, which is
Right.
between the town and the condominium.
so they were taking $100,000 roughly and dividing it among the 99-year lease. So it'd be $1,011 due each year.
Okay.
But it's, that's, nothing was ever paid or collected on that. And I think everybody's in agreement of that.
Okay,
Yep.
and how many years is that?
That would be 14
Arrears?
years.
14 years in arrears. Okay.
It'd be 14,154.
All right, so that's the rent issue. And then there's the 40,000 some odd dollars that was left over from the development.
Right. That startup capital was 40,000, I think 40,917 or something.
that's
Okay.
the gift that was accepted some years back?
That was 2005, it was accepted.
Right, it was accepted, and in 2010, it was completely expended. And
On what?
it was to the septic.
To?
It was the septic. The bills were out to Whitewater, $16,000 of it went to Whitewater, and,
You had the ledger when we talked earlier. Do you have that ledger, David?
yeah, it's in the packet here.
All right, so can you just identify that, because like Paul, I didn't get through this pile of stuff, so I'm not familiar with this gift that Bob's
It's,
described and what's done with it.
it's about 10 pages in, and
Okay.
it looks
Okay, I
like
got
this.
3 piles of stuff here, so.
There was a secondary package and there was a primary package. There was a secondary backup document in there.
Okay, I think
And
I
it
have
was
that,
Leland Farms history of receipt and expenditure of gift funds, and that had been previously distributed
Okay,
as well.
maybe you could just tell the
Okay.
folks who don't have this paper
About
what it says.
$16,000 went to Whitewater in April 2010, and then there was a Leland Farms leasehold condo from September 2010.
What does that mean?
I haven't, it says letter written April 13th, 2010, requesting Board of Selectmen to approve payment of $25,900 for hydrofracturing of Leland Well from funds transferred by SCHC. So it's something to do with the well.
So 25.9 was transferred to the trust at that time to pay a bill they had incurred for the fracturing of the well?
Right, that's what
Okay.
it looks like. And I did ask the town accountant to be here, but she could not attend tonight.
But that, between those two numbers, that fully exhausted that 40,000
Right.
some odd? Okay.
The transfer was approved by the Board of Selectmen regarding the water system holding tank replacement, and refers to minutes, Board of Selectmen minutes of July 2012, July 19th. But we've
All right.
looked
So-
at that last year, and again, this year, that money came in and it's completely expended,
Okay, so there's nothing left in that,
nothing left.
on that fund. And then there's a third,
But can
Okay,
I
yeah, go
just
ahead.
interrupt, Mike? So if I read section 4.3 additional rent, and it's further covered in 8.9 on page 16 of the ground lease, those expenditures out of that $41,000 gift to Whitewater and holding tank replacement and so forth, all that stuff that was done in 2010, 2012, from that 2004 gift, based on what I read, those expenditures technically are additional rent types of expenditures.
I'm not following.
Well, I think
Well,
what you're
the
saying is
point is
there's
that-
obligations under 8.9 that says landlord will maintain the well at the sole cost and expense of tenants. So
Yes.
the way that was done was the $40,000 that had been given to the town by the corporation for use at Leland Farms was applied to that bill. I mean, is that?
Yeah, versus billing the tenant
Instead of
for
billing the tenant.
those costs in 2010 and 2012.
Which could have been done as additional rent, it looks like.
That's what I'm saying.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the town could have retained that capital
Correct.
reserve instead? Okay.
That's the way I read it.
All right, but that decision's behind us. That was made
That's
by a
right.
prior
That ship
board.
is sailed.
And that ship has sailed. Okay. And then the third kind of general financial issue is the sinking fund, which started at $450 a month, was supposed to be inflated by the consumer price index, was apparently not inflated by the consumer price index,
Right.
and has been paid up, but only with the uninflated value, is that right?
Right. This was the Maintenance Reserve Fund, is what it was referred to, and it was to start with an initial payment of $7,000 and then monthly $450 in year one. This started in February, so the total that first year would have been another $5,400. Actually, not 5,400. The first full year would have been 5,400, and then increasing by the CPIU each year.
Yeah.
And that, when you factor in the CPIU and the inflator, the balance that would have produced extra into the maintenance reserve fund that wasn't collected was $16,859.
All right, so from, based on what, it's 1659, what you're saying is based on what the lease contemplated at the time, that maintenance reserve fund is 16,859 short of where it should have been at this time?
If it had been, yes.
If it had been fully paid
If
and
they
inflated every year?
followed the lease and inflated it by the consumer price index each year.
Okay.
So again, on that, if I'm reading what this thing is, David, which is how those monies are spent, right? Is that a fair statement? This is showing how those monies were spent. And only some small amount, it looks like, has been spent of the monies that have been collected, 3,100. However, that 3,100 has been spent on wastewater treatment. And as I read this source of revenue, or this part of the ground lease, that maintenance reserve fund refers to facilities and roadway repair and maintenance. And not,
Section are you on?
so 810, section, page 17 of the ground lease, 810. Maintenance reserve fund, maintenance, repair, and replacement of the facilities in the roadway. Yet the town used the funds for wastewater treatment, which arguably is an additional rent item.
Right, I
See,
think
you
that's
follow what I'm
something.
saying?
Right.
Okay.
I'm not sure how far back the town has been paying that, but I
Okay.
think that's something that we need to look at transferring to be directly billed to.
Okay.
Wayland Farms.
But this contemplates from the maintenance reserve that the landlord would use that directly to do maintenance activities, David, or not?
Well, it's specified,
The town's not the landlord.
it doesn't say to pay the annual maintenance of the wastewater plant. I mean.
Well, that's
what you're
additional
saying.
rent. I'm
Right.
saying that should come
Right.
out of the additional rent. If, and again, both the additional rent and the maintenance reserve fund is solely to be used for repairs and betterments of Leland Farms, right? In lieu of the, I guess, the condo association making those payments. Is that
Right.
a fair interpretation?
So what you're thinking is the,
I'm just trying to keep the buckets in the right
right,
place.
right. But the money paid
And some other towns involved.
would be money that was foregone for some other.
Yeah, that's correct. And because we've heard that, you know, maybe there's rotten wood, or I don't know what else in some of the building and whatnot. I know we don't, the town doesn't, I spoke to the Ed Wagner, CMD director, we don't plow the roads over there, we don't repair the roads. That, you know, that's a private entity that deals with that, so. But arguably, those monies could be, that have been collected under this maintenance reserve fund, could be used for that purpose. So that's the understanding I'm trying to gain here. But I might have to back up and say, who is it? Who's the deal with at this stage of the
I
game?
think that lease is between the town and the corporation.
Yeah.
And the corporation then did a deed, a master deed, to the condominium.
To the condominium association.
So they
That's right, so
basically
they've
take
assumed
on-
that.
I think they assumed the lease,
Yeah.
Just a 99-year deal.
this deal, the master deed,
Yes.
because it's a ground lease condo.
Hey, guys, a lot of us know this stuff, so like Corey, it'll help you, because we know, 'cause we've been.
Yeah,
since the
we'll take
beginning.
input, we will.
Okay.
This isn't what we can.
We're just dealing with what
I know, but we
we're
can
doing
help.
over.
But we can answer a lot of questions and help you out.
Like Corey Lincoln's been on the trustee board since it started, so she was there in the beginning, probably can help you with these questions you're having. If you let her.
Corey, have you heard any questions you can help us with?
Yes,
Okay, good. What do you want to tell us?
okay, and George has heard some questions that he can help with.
All right, go ahead. Yeah, come up to the table if you could.
Okay. Yeah, hold I was trying to take some notes as things were happening, and I'm glad Bob Delaney is here. Kind of going in order of when the issues came up is that Bob was the president of the corporation at the time when I came back to the Housing Partnership and the corporation because I had been absent on the advisory committee. So Bob is the most knowledgeable person about what happened during the construction phase. He was then the first trustee that was appointed on behalf of SCHC to the Condominium Trust Board of Trustees, and I was his successor after that. So
Can we stick now, for now, to the financial stuff and get
Sure.
to that stuff, the
There-
governance stuff later?
Okay, there are essentially three junctures at which the town is involved financially. One is the Reserve Maintenance Fund. And you're reading the term literally, but if you read back in the documents, Peter, and the definition of facilities is septic and water. And if you bear in mind, the underlying premise of all this is that the town retains ownership of the land, so the town's financial interest is primarily focused on protection of the land. So that involves making sure that the septic field is monitored as it should be and maintained, and if necessarily replaced. Also the water system, and it also has the word roadway included in those three things. Early in the process, because of state regulations and requirements of quarterly testing and supervision of both water and septic, the association was incurring bills, and I approached Susan Adler, who at the time was the town administrator, about tapping into those payments of that fund to be used under the language of that particular provision in the lease. She took a look at it and agreed that indeed that was appropriate. And so we have, over the years, been paying such things as, it's not simply a total of $3,100 over the years. It's a much larger number than that. We've been paying for such things as septage pumping, the quarterly water testing, and the inspection of the septic, and we also have made requests of the selectmen to allow us to pay some bills that are associated with the well water. We have never attempted to tap into that money. When I say we, I'm referring to the condominium association.
Can I back you up a second? You're talking
Sure.
about the maintenance reserve fund.
The maintenance
being
reserve
used-
fund.
It being used, and the mechanics of that was the Board of Trustees would
That-
request the selectmen
The
to pay as well.
mechanics of it was that the money was paid into that fund, which is, it's paid in by the condominium association. The town holds the money, interest-free, I might add. Heaven only knows why it was set up that way, but it was. The town holds the money, and then we have to make application to the Board of Selectmen to allow bills that we have incurred to be paid out of that money, with the exception, and we have no idea why this happened. I once had Doug Brody go back and look through old selectmen's minutes, and he can't figure out why it happened. The required inspections and testing that have to be done on the water system are a contract that the association itself holds with Whitewater, and that bill is paid out of the operating
General fund.
budget of condominium trust. But for some reason, the town signs the contract, holds the contract, and makes the payments to whoever is doing the quarterly inspections for the septic. And I believe that 3,100 you're referring to is referring to the
Well, it's just a
town-
schedule that only shows a small.
Well,
short
the
period of
town
time.
then pays directly to the company who has the current contract, and I don't know who has
Yeah,
it
it's just
currently,
last-
because the town handles that.
Last fiscal
We
year.
have no idea why that was split that way. I asked the selectmen several years ago to try and do some research about it, and they never, Doug Brody, as I said, looked through the minutes, and he can't figure out why it happened. It seems to be a little nonsensical. Frankly, I think it makes sense for them both to be in one location. The last time this was discussed, which was a while ago, at the condominium association trustees meeting, the association would prefer to have control of both contracts to be able to get the best bid on the contract and then make application to get the bill covered by the town, rather than having the town enter into the contract. Don't know why it happened. That's the maintenance reserve fund. So that's septic, well, and roadway.
Okay, I think I
Then there-
found where facilities is
Yeah.
spelled out, and that was important to me.
Yeah, then there's the issue of base rent. Base rent, and I smiled when Bob Delaney said that he was under the impression it was $1, because everybody was kind of under that impression. Nobody noticed that there was a base rent provision that was in the land lease. Nobody noticed in SCHC, nobody noticed on the part of the town, nobody noticed with the management company, nobody noticed with the trustees, and it wasn't really, it really has kind of come up as a result of digging into what's going on. I was not part of the discussion as to writing this particular lease, but the sort of common lore that had always been handed down was indeed, as Bob remembered it, it was $1. I was shocked the first time I went back and looked and saw that it was $1,100, but in fact, it's in the lease. I'm not sure why it's in the lease, but it's there. So I certainly think that we probably need to work out some sort of a payment plan to make sure that that gets added into the budget. That's not going to be welcome news to the people who have to support the operating budget of Leland Farms, but the lease is what the lease is. The other thing I wanted to mention about the CPI escalator is that also had never been added on to what the bill was, and it had never been paid. One of the things I was going to raise tonight was some of the issues about communication between the Board of Selectmen and Leland Farms. And one of the points I think would be very helpful is and I can only ascribe this, I'm guessing, but it's my speculation that over the years, because the town, and particularly the Board of Selectmen, have very rightfully tried to maintain their distance from the operating considerations of Leland Farms, that has had an unintended consequence, that there's been a certain distance about some of the financial things that have happened, and things have been handled rather passively. So one of the suggestions I was going to make that I think will be helpful to everyone is that a simple monthly invoice be sent from the town to the management company of Leland Farms, that the town calculate the CPI and add it to the bill. And I'd also suggest that a simple invoice of the base rent and whatever kind of payment plan we can work out about catching up on the base rent, that similarly be made part of a simple invoice. As a matter of fact, Dave Williams and I talked about that, and he thought that was a pretty straightforward, simple device that could be used to do that.
The funny thing is, we found such a letter dated a couple of years ago. We just don't know if it was ever sent, but it was the exact thing you're asking for. It was a letter from Bob Reed, I believe.
Dennis Luttrell.
Was that? Oh,
Dennis
Dennis
Luttrell.
Luttrell. Dennis Luttrell.
Okay.
Billing the trust. It may never have, I wouldn't know unless it's in your files.
Okay. No.
Okay, good.
No.
George, did you have anything to add on the financial side?
I have one more piece of the financial piece that you mentioned
Okay.
about the additional rent. The additional rent clause is sort of premised on the assumption that, in fact, it was the town who paid for the installation and construction of well and septic and roadway, and in fact, that's not the case. That was part of the development cost, and it was paid by SCHC for the construction of those three elements that are at Leland Farms. So the concept of that particular thing has never been invoked, because all of the expenses that have been borne about, and they have been considerable, over the water system and the septic system, particularly the water system, has turned out to be a very expensive prospect. All of those things have been paid for by
Maintenance reserve.
by using the gift money, the maintenance reserve money, and with internal money that is generated by the association.
So, and that's another way to handle it too, right? There's no reason to pay additional rent if you haven't incurred any expense for the town.
Right.
George, anything else come to light here?
No, I just think that you should clarify the terminology. The basic rent is what it is, it's spelled out in 4.2.
In section 4.2, Cory, can you push the mic over to George?
It's set out in section 4.2. The additional rent is defined, is set out in 4.3. And the maintenance payments should not be confused with the rent payments. The maintenance payments are really, you're holding their money.
That's right.
And the purpose of you holding that money, according to the lease anyways, is that that's to ensure that at some point when the water and/or the septic system fail, or the road, that would be Village Way, ceases to be usable for whatever reason, that there
Leland
be...
Farms Way.
No. Village Way.
No.
Leland Farm? Okay. Then you would have money available that could be used.
Yes.
Okay. And
So do you envision any reason for additional rent
yes,
that isn't
look
covered
at
by the
Section
maintenance
7.
reserve fund?
Not the maintenance reserve fund.
Okay, for what purpose would the town,
Look at Section
would
7.
the condominium association pay additional rent to
For
the
all of the
town?
reasons that are set forth in Section 7.
Section 7.
At the same time, I'd point out that under the terms of the Maintenance Reserve Fund, which is water, septic, and roadway, which is where the town's interest intersects, is that if there is insufficient money for something that needs to be done within the Maintenance Reserve Fund, it clearly says that the town is not liable for that.
Yes.
It is the association that is liable for that.
Right. So what's 7? Can you, without reading 7, what,
7 says that the lessee takes on certain obligations.
yeah,
Okay, payment for instance, the payment of the maintenance reserve fund, the payment for the maintenance of the septic system and the water.
that's all maintenance reserve fund, though.
If it's, the maintenance
That's-
reserve fund is inadequate,
Okay,
then it spills over to additional rent.
yeah, yeah.
But you should, according to the lease anyways, use the maintenance reserve fund for anything that has to do with water and septic. If it's inadequate, then you add it on as the rent. That's the way I read Section 7.
Yeah.
Now, 7 also has some additional significance. Whatever the obligations are of the lessee, to the outside of the building, to the common areas, whatever, If the lease says that that's their responsibility, and the lessee does not fulfill that, it appears that 7 provides that the town can then step in the best interest of the town, because a decaying facility, not facility as used in the lease, but a decaying structure would lower the value of the property. 7 says that you can step in, the town can step in, perform the work or have the work performed, and then add it to the rent as additional rent.
Gotcha.
And you're saying, George, your reading of that is not just with respect to the things that Corey outlined before, it's also the buildings or other parts of the physical structure?
No,
Just the roads and the water and the sewer?
the reserve fund, no, it's everything.
Everything? Oh, that's what I'm
Everything
asking.
that you can look for in that lease that says that the lessee will do something that costs money.
Yeah.
If they fail to do it, the town has a right to step in under the lease and do it, and then add it to the rent, add the cost of that to the rent.
So kind of a standard
That's
commercial
7.
lease clause.
Okay.
So what you in essence have done is what Corey indicated earlier. You have, the town has, protected the value of the property by maintaining those things that the state could step in and say, you can't have that property as a livable place without water, without septic. You have got the maintenance reserve fund for that. If that's used, then you've got the additional rent. If the property is going downhill because the buildings are collapsing and there's an obligation on the part of the tenant, that would be the association, to fix the outside of the building, not the inside of the building. Then you could step in and do that and require the association to pay that as additional rent. So, that's my assessment of it.
Okay, thanks. And now, does anybody have any questions or anything to add on the financial topics we just discussed? Of rent, the gift that was spent, the maintenance reserve fund, any of that stuff? No, good.
What's the definition of roadway, I guess?
Does anybody have that answer at hand?
Apparently, you do.
I do not. It's simply that the word appears once in section 8.4, I believe. That's out from memory, I'm not sure. And it has been an expense that it has been an issue that we have never attempted to apply to the maintenance reserve fund for reimbursement about anything concerning the roadway.
But it's a private road, Leland Farm
Correct.
Road or...
It is not an accepted road.
Leland Drive.
It's Leland Drive. It is not an accepted road. It is a private road.
I Googled it, they have Leland Farms Road.
Ken?
So in other words, if there was money in the fund and the roadway needed repairs, that could come out of the fund.
That's the way
As
I
a
would read
maintenance
that.
reserve fund,
Yep.
according to this, that's right.
Yep.
Yes.
One question about the financial is if the trust, the leasehold trust, is in charge of water and septic, or because they don't have a property to lease the property to, correct? They don't have water and sewer? Unfortunately, the water problem that we had bankrupted the association that the owners of the properties had to pay.
The town can
And-
step in on that, but it's still the cost of the owners under the way this is written.
But so we paid, and it literally took 100% of our reserves out, cleared us out. And I just find it interesting that the town appointee wasn't communicating with you guys on that.
That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about the financial
Financials, we
issues.
paid for the over $100,000 for the water problem.
Okay, that came out of the
We had to
fees, the
out
annual
of
assessment?
our condominium reserves,
And that was to repair the water?
correct,
Okay, and that was in addition to the numbers that David just read, the $40,000
correct.
that came out of that, and whatever was in the maintenance reserve fund at the time was not touched for that?
No, indeed, we, over the issue of the water problems that have been incurred that she's referring to, we applied to get the remainder of the gift, which the Board of Selectmen, in fact, granted. As a matter of fact, we supplied a stack of, there's a great deal of paperwork associated with that.
That's the well fracturing?
Yes.
Okay.
We also applied to have money reimbursed from the maintenance reserve fund, And the rest of the expense was, when she's referring to the reserve fund, she is referring to the reserve fund that is held by the association itself for its own use.
So there's a separate reserve fund that we don't know anything about, and we don't have any
Exactly.
involvement.
And you have no involvement with.
And that's your condo fee
And it's
reserve
the
fund.
condo fee.
The portion of
Well,
it that's not paid as rent or paid as maintenance.
part of the condo fees go into the maintenance reserve fund that is held by the association, as a matter of fact, is required by state law,
Okay.
condo law.
All right.
So it has nothing to do with the Board of Selectmen or the town.
Okay, so does that all add up? Does that make sense?
No.
Well, basically, there was a lot of issues that happened in 2010, between 2010 and 2012 with our water system that basically broke down our reserves. With the hydrofracking, I'm not sure, you said that there was some money taken out for that, but from the town, but there was also things like pipes that corroded and that had to get pulled out. And there was other things like the Whitewater actually thought that that there was a problem in the tank, and there was actually a problem in the well, and they burned out our pumps trying to force water through the system. And so that created a problem with water deliveries, and we basically spent about $20,000 on that, and they weren't held accountable for it. But right now, with the water tank that was replaced, I know we had to take out a loan, and we're paying back that loan. I'm not sure the exact amount, but I think it was something around $65,000 or $61,000, and over a 5-year period. And with that, on top of other things that we owe, I think we're close to something like $80,000 in debt. And we're talking about paying rent to the town for the land, but I mean, how are you going to bleed rock, take blood from a stone, So, I mean, it's just peculiar that, that's being discussed when, we're in a situation where we can barely survive and we're falling apart, and we don't have money to fix our roofs. So, I think that's the main thing that we're trying to get at tonight, and the people are sitting here and trying to speak to you about. And I understand you have a situation where you need to discuss, what the relationship is, but we have an issue that I believe of more importance, and that's just being able to survive and move forward and try to move and try to build up ourselves back to a situation where we can actually maybe at some point start to thrive. But right now it's not going that way, and a lot of us, we're just asking for some help, and that's pretty much why we're here. And I know some people want to speak, and we'd like to get the opportunity to, so.
Well, on the financial stuff, anything more on the financial? You have something?
In essence, what we've got here is a short-circuiting of the process, but not a change in the end result. As I understand the lease, you have the obligation to maintain the water and septic system at their expense. So whether they paid it directly to you after you paid it, or whether they paid it directly, they still end up, the bottom line still is, that the person who pays for all of that material, all of those services, to maintain the two systems, the water system and the septic system, is their financial responsibility.
I mean, right, as it would be with any condominium,
That's right.
any place.
It's not subsidized housing. It is, you've taken on some responsibilities, and they have taken on financial responsibilities, and they directly paid those financial responsibilities, so they didn't have to go through you. But if they had gone through you, they'd still owe you, the town, the amount that you paid to have that service done.
Right, and in effect, the town lent the annual rent money because it's never been paid, so, I mean, that way of looking at it, it's
Even if
$14,000 to the good.
Even if you had expended all the money in the reserve fund,
Right.
and you did it,
Right.
according to the lease, you do it, you pay the bill,
Right,
then you bill them.
right.
They pay you. They
Oh,
didn't
right.
do that, they paid directly.
And there's no administrative fee
No,
capability in any of this, correct?
All right. So that was the financial issues. The next one, I think, is, it kind of grows out of that, which is the town involvement and the Board of Trustees for the condominium, the corporation that created the master deed, and the town's role. I think, Corey, you may have an understanding of what that is. If you want to convey that, that would probably be helpful. I think other people may have an understanding of what that relationship is. And we have town council here who has an opinion, I understand, so.
Okay, yes. The documents lay out a 5-person governing body that governs Leland Farms Condominium Trust. 2 of those members are elected by the affordables, 2 are elected by the market rate units, and the 5th represents the public interest of the town of Sherborn. And it was initially appointed by SCHC, the Sherborn Community Housing Corporation.
Okay.
As I think I commented earlier, the first person was Bob Delaney, and then I replaced him on that position. And in the annual filings with the state on the Board of Trustees, I've been in continuous service since then. I think there is no limitation on the voting rights or responsibilities or privileges of the public member, the public interest member of the Board of Trustees. And I have participated in the meetings since then. I don't know if you have anything else you'd like me to say about that?
No, but that's created by Section 3.2 of the
Yeah.
Declaration of Trust, I believe.
And the Board of Trustees has the responsibility for the governance of the association.
As a whole. Okay. Anybody else have any comments on the trustee?
Do you want me to stand up, or?
Depends on what you're going to say. I mean, I don't know if that's up to you.
On the appointment, yes.
Can she take a seat, or?
You know, again, are we talking about the position?
Yes.
Okay, we'll talk about the position, it's fine.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Let me go there. Okay.
It's just easier for people at home to hear you on the mic.
Yeah, that's
since it's
great.
being taped.
My name is Louisa Chistari. I reside at 5 South Main Street, which is unit number 17 of Leland Farms. I've been an owner, an equity owner there since 2009. I did approach the Board of Selectmen a couple of years ago, 2 to 3 years ago, knowing that we had a pretty significant problem. And at that time, the Board of Selectmen said we have no control, no reach, no authority over any of the ongoings at Leland Farms. So it kind of got dropped, but I pushed it a little bit further within the last year, and I was able to get us on this agenda tonight. It did take a long time, and I'm really grateful for you guys giving us this opportunity, because in the words of the trustees, the town appointment representative included, Leland Farms is in serious trouble. That's what we were notified by in our annual meeting back in May. So I feel that given this dire state of affairs, and considering that we've had a town appointment on our board for the last 14 years, being the same person, we elect trustees within our community every 3 years, because just like in any politics, term limits, I think, are really important. And in this particular case, we've had one person, and I apologize, I do apologize, I know you guys have had some changes here too, but it seems like, you know, the town appointee and the Board of Selectmen haven't had a great sense of communication, and hence why there's a lot of discrepancy and a lot of misunderstandings as to what's been going on. It's unusual to me, and I think it's unusual to many of our residents at Leland Farms, that the town actually votes on what our money is spent on personally in a private condominium association. For example, the town doesn't have an interest in, you know, how we're going to pay for our roofs or where a high school student can park their car when we have ample parking spaces, maybe I could reference many items that are personal to the association, and yet the town representative has the authority to be, you know, a tiebreaker in these very important and personal decisions that we have to deal with within our association. So it's my belief that I think that that is unfair to our association. Or if not, I feel like it's great to have a town appointee because we have a leasehold trust, and that was the reason to have an appointee. But at this point, these decisions are not, don't affect the town, they affect us. They affect us on a personal basis every single day. And I feel like if a high school student wants a parking space, what's the town got to do with that? It's within our community. And so I feel like we're being kind of disenfranchised in that regard. And I would like the board to consider the fact that we are having, that's creating a problem for us. That was one of my major points. Our association is bankrupt. And again, a town member is voting on our financial well-being. So how does that tie together, I guess is the question, and what are your thoughts on that?
Do you want our thoughts on that?
I would love your thoughts on that.
Anything?
Well, I'm one of the architects of this whole thing. Served on the housing partnership and on this corporation, and was a selectman. We had a vision of providing housing diversity in the town and to provide some affordable housing, to take responsibility to not just leave things to the market, but to proactively try to create diversity of housing stock in this community that was mostly single-family homes set on some fairly substantially sized lots. In order to convince the voters to go along with this, there was probably a 10-year period. Is Bob Delaney still here? Probably
Yeah,
a 10-year period of work, of finding funding and trying to convince the voters of the town to support the use of their land. There was a lot of discussion about what land to use and so on, but there were a lot of reservations by many citizens of this town about the use of this land in particular. If we ever wanted to expand Woodhaven, wouldn't this be the place we'd expand it all? There were all kinds of issues. And because of that, there was a necessity in order to get this going and get the town behind it, that we put limitations on this that would reflect the different views of the citizens about whether or not we should have this at all. And these documents reflect those compromises that were battled out in committee meetings and advisory committee meetings and town meeting floor. These provisions aren't accidental. These provisions aren't just put in there to annoy people. They were put in there on the basis that if they're not there, that there would not have been a project, essentially. So that's like taking out, the United States Constitution and say, gee, this is a good document, but we don't like the provision here about an independent judiciary, or we don't like the Bill of Rights. But if you didn't have the Bill of Rights, you wouldn't have Massachusetts join the United States, and there wouldn't have been a United States. So all this work went together to put all these things together. Nothing in here is an accident. Nothing in here is an oversight. Nothing in here wasn't intended to be exactly what it was. And as part of that, there was to be a town representative. And that town representative, because the town was doing so much for this project to get it going, to create it, to conceive of it, to fund it, to start it up, it was a grand effort. We wanted a town representative, fully engaged town representative.
With no term limit or with no
Absolutely no term
communication,
limit.
with no communication to the town, no accountability.
there always is accountability to the town, because ultimately, the way we set up the corporation is appointed by the Board of Selectmen. The Selectmen control the corporation controls the representative, so at the end of the day, there is direct accountability back and forth.
But
to
hasn't the
town.
corporation been dissolved?
The corporation has not been dissolved.
With one remaining member that you guys aren't sure who it is?
Well, there's a set of minutes here that there was, all the officers wanted to resign, and Bob Delaney came in and said he was going to resign, and he made a presentation to the board, and then it says, Mr. Durensis suggested, these are from the minutes of 2003, Mr. Durensis suggested that the results desired for the Sherborn Housing Corporation could best be accomplished by letting the corporation become dormant or inactive. The advantage to dormancy would be that the corporation could be preserved and could be revived years ahead from now, should we ever need it again. And then I go on to describe that there were two special acts that gave some very important powers to the corporation that exist nowhere else, and no other government agency has those powers. The powers to not be subject to competitive bidding. There was a whole series of really nice provisions there. So, Mr. Durensis, again reading from the minutes of September 9, 2003. Mr. Durensis expressed his concern that the corporation may have some future use for the town, and should the need arise, a new corporation could be developed. Wait, I've just read the wrong line. Mr. Durensis replied, a new corporation would not have the benefits of these statutes. So that's the last thing in the minutes, and I think everybody resigned, and somebody had to step forward. Maybe Corey knows who that person was.
Well, I wasn't present at the Selectmen.
But
I mean, I think we're still going through the record to trying to figure that out. Doesn't sound like anybody here.
But the point is, the corporation's still there.
Well, and then that's my point, is what interest does the townspeople have, the 4,000 or so townspeople in Sherborn, what care do they have to have a town vote in our private association on things like a parking space or a new roof or something that doesn't involve the leasehold trust?
I think what she's basically getting at is that this vote, this person that is appointed by the town is voting on things that have actually caused a negative impact upon the community. And I know that...
Can I just interrupt you for a second?
Right.
Is it she has a veto power? I think it's a majority vote, right?
No, it's a majority,
So let's say it's not the town representative has made these decisions, right? The trust has made these decisions.
Right, but it's, I mean, if there's a 2-to-2 split, and then that becomes the tiebreaker.
Has that happened?
Right.
Do you have examples of when that's happened?
Yes, I do.
If I could speak to that. I went back through my imperfect sloppy files, and I also went on line with our management company to see if I could access as many sets of minutes, and take a look at what the votes were off those minutes. And during the time period of March 2013 to March 2014, I was able to find 9 sets of minutes. And I went through the minutes, and I kept a tally of the counted votes that were made in the board meetings, none of which were attended by anyone other than the board members. And there were 4 instances of 5-0 votes. There were 8 instances of 4-1 votes. Incidentally, we don't record who voted, just the numeric vote. There were 9 instances of 4-0 votes with 1 abstention. There were 4 instances of 3-1 votes with 1 abstention, and there was 1 recording of a 3-2 vote.
Could I interject with that? Our minutes are written by a trustee who, I don't know how she got the job to do it, but
oftentimes, it's not exactly accurate, and I'm a trustee. I mean, if I could get up and speak, I'd like to.
I just,
podium, but,
excuse me. Excuse me. Yeah, okay, you'll have a chance, don't worry.
Okay, can I please speak without interruption?
All right, this is enough.
The minutes, approving the minutes are also included in the counted votes, and the recorded votes are the recorded votes. It is only one member of the trustees who thinks that the minutes suffer from lack of
So now it's getting to
factuality.
the personal point where we don't want to go, so we're not going to go there.
We're not talking about personal.
To change the minutes and.
All right, honestly, I don't know that any of us really care about the minutes.
It's just the reach. We're talking about town reach, no person, no people, but town reach on personal matters. We understand that there has to be a town representative because of the leasehold trust, but we don't understand why they have a vote.
They have a vote because the voters wanted to be sure that there was a quality development.
So you're
You
saying our
understand-
Board of Trustees isn't quality?
If the way this is set up is that people have to pay for repairs. What if everybody decided, we don't want to spend any money, let the thing fall into disrepair, and then we have a blight in the community because the residents wants to spend nothing?
Do you think the owners would allow for the equity to be gone by doing such a thing?
That's not the issue.
I
The issue
respectfully
is,
disagree
why
with
is
you.
the town of Sherborn interested in the decisions that are being made there? And I'm explaining to you why. It's because we wanted to be sure there was and remains a good community, keeping the buildings maintained, keeping the land maintained, keeping the property maintained, so that it fits into the community.
I respectfully disagree with you on that. We are in charge of our property. We care about the quality control. We want equity. We want to have a beautiful property. We are in dire straits right now, and that we have asked for maybe a possible new town person to be associated, because one person for 14 years becomes too personal. I'm all set. I appreciate your time. I know that my other community members have a lot more to say, but I did get us on this docket, and I just wanted to bring that to your attention, that we are in a serious, serious situation, and I don't think that the town's injection with a vote has been helping us. And I turn this over to our trustee, Mike or Ellen.
Well, actually, it's my meeting, so I'm going to call on whoever
There
I
you
want to
go.
call on.
There you
And
go. Thank you
You have your
very-
hand
thank you
up,
very
so
much.
I'll,
Hi, Ellen Heffron.
Ellen, could you go up to the mic, please?
Hi, thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak. I just want to say that it is an affordable, well, it's mixed use, but it is an affordable, there are 10 affordable units, and we are about $80,000 in the hole, in debt. We have 6 roofs to repair. The costs are just adding up. So what we're asking is, we vote on new trustees, when the seats come up. We just are wondering if, the town can't do the same. We feel like we might, benefit from some new, viewpoints, some new leadership, it's, in 14 years, we've gone from healthy to really in debt.
Yeah, I think the implication that that's because of the town's representation or the town's involvement with this project is insulting to the
No.
folks who have been involved and to the
No,
town.
I'm not
And
saying that at all. I'm saying.
Well, I think others have said that.
Oh, I don't mean to imply that. We are able to elect our affordable trustees and our, market unit trustees, and I think we just want to see if the town can maybe, change the town, we don't mind having a town trustee, and it's nothing personal at all, but maybe we could do with some new vision, some new ideas, because, we have to get ourselves out of this hole that we're in.
In a moment, I'm kind of baffled because I'm hearing both that having a town person is the problem and having a town person is the solution.
No,
and
I don't think anybody
I-
has said that they
No
don't.
problem with it.
Yeah, nobody has any problem with having the town, a town representative on our board. It's just that, it's good to change things periodically. That's what
That's
we're
good. So, I mean, that's what you get to do. You get to change 4 of the members on your board every year. You get to change
Right.
1 or 2 members, and the town will get its choice when it gets its choice, and they'll decide whether to change or not to change.
Yeah, well, we're just bringing that idea
Understood.
to you.
No, understood. Carol, you had something to say?
Well, I knew nothing of this problem until I came to this meeting tonight. And I've heard everything that everybody has said, and it just sounds like you're blaming Corey Lincoln for your financial problems. And it's just as clear as a bell that that's what you're saying.
No,
No,
not at all.
We're not
Well,
blaming.
then you need to say it differently.
Yeah, sir. Could you say your name, too?
My name is Michael Franchi. I lived at Leyland Farms.
Yeah, you can certainly go to the microphone. I just wanted to get your name out there.
You guys. Have fun.
My name is Michael Franchi. I live at 14 Leyland Drive in Sherborn. I've lived there since 2001. And I don't know who that woman was, but what she said was exactly right. It's my opinion that we've had problems at Leyland Farms since I've been there. But I don't see exactly where the town is responsible. I personally feel it's up to the owners to step up and take responsibility and be self-managers on our property. Corey, who I served with from 2001 to 2003, is a real pro, in my opinion. I think she's very passionate about her work. She cares. From my experience with her, she's very easy to work with. She's obviously knowledgeable, as you see, as she can answer any question we have here. I think it's up to the trustees to step up and get this property going again. It's blaming the town, blaming Corey for our problems, in my opinion, isn't the right way to go. We have to step up, get good management. We have a management company that we have, that we pay to oversee our financial situation, follow through on the rules and regulations. We have to make sure that they're doing their job. But every one of us has to be a manager of ourselves. We have to, it's part of being an owner. If you own real estate, take responsibility. The more you put into it, the more you're going to get out of it. So I just wanted to agree with, I don't know who that woman was, but I agree with her.
Carol, Carol. Do you mean Carol?
Yeah. I agree with her 100%. Corey is a very credible person, a good person.
I'm really trying not to turn this into a referendum on any one person. I think, can I ask you a question, sir, just following up? I think I heard from some of the other residents who spoke that they do, putting aside the identity of the person, they do think that having a continued town role on the Board of Trustees is appropriate. Do you agree with that?
Absolutely.
You do?
I mean, as long as they're providing help, I mean, what Corey provides, I mean, she is such a resource.
I think we're back to the referendum, but thank you. Thanks for your input. I think that's excellent.
What? Absolutely, Corey.
Anybody else? Yes, sir.
I got to speak.
Yep, sure. You know, again, with sort of the same ground rules that it's structure, not person.
Hi, I'm Mike Nellis, 11 Leland Drive. I think everybody that lives at Leland Farms has somewhat of a different opinion. There's a few people with the same opinion, and some people sort of in the middle of different views and viewpoints, and there's sort of a few different extremes. And but basically, I can give you my viewpoint, and I know there's quite a few that agree with myself. And I'm not looking for the town to take away the trustee, the town-appointed trustee. I think it's actually, in a way, it's a really good idea. There's people who think that because of the situation we're in, that the position should be limited to vote on issues that only regard the town, like the property itself, it's the maintenance of the property, whether it be the roofs or a landscaper dumping sand into the wetlands, which has happened quite a few times. It's, that stuff makes sense. That stuff makes perfect sense. And and there's people that just want that to be the role that this person is concerned with, that votes on these things, not things that involve financial issues, which personal issues. There's a lot of these things that are happening with right now that it has, Ellen stated that it has become personal over 14 years with the same person. It's maybe something fresher, just something new would help us. A new viewpoint. And when there's 5 trustees and one of them is a town-appointed one, it's actually, it does end up being a big percentage of the things that occur inside the community. And it's I don't know how you can describe it, but there's a lot of personalities that are clashing here, and it's unfortunate, but I think the main goal is to succeed and to come out of this somehow. And just with the situation we're in, it's I can't even, I came here thinking, that there was going to be, different opinions, and I mean, I wasn't expecting our appointed trustee to come out and say, you need to start charging these people rent when they're $80,000 in the hole. I mean, but I'm just having a hard time with comprehending what your thoughts are, what your opinions are. If we can get some sort of help with this, there have been 3-2 votes on things like parking, a high school kid being able to park a car, 3-2 votes on whether somebody gets a shrub or something planted in front of their house. Things like raising condo fees, there's been 3-2 votes. Seeking an alternative management, not actually getting rid, because I know that some people want to self-manage, but just seeking a different management company. There's been a split on that, and that's really where our main concern is. With just right now, we're having trouble with this management company that we have, and if we could have somebody that agrees upon that and maybe seek some sort of other alternative where our finances can be moved into somewhere that's a little bit more trusting, then that would help us out a great deal.
One reason I say we were talking about the structures, I don't think we have before us any
Right.
ability, or it's not the time where we would be reviewing Corey's appointment or anything. So, I mean, this
Right.
is not really what we're doing here. I mean, town council may be able to shed some light on the length of the appointment. I think you did some digging into that. Do you want to?
Whatever you want me to.
Yeah, I think.
I mean, I understand, and a lot of us came here not understanding what this meeting was or what it was about, and we quickly found out right when it started. And I mean, if there is a way that we could have some sort of a meeting that just does focus on that, that would be great.
Could I just speak briefly? A couple of things, Mike, because you've emailed on this. I know we've emailed a little bit back and forth. And for me, what I like to do is I like to understand things before I do anything about them. And what Paul described in terms of what's in these, what the deal is, and the structure and all that sort of stuff was very helpful to me. Also understanding, it took a while because maybe I just didn't read as carefully as I should how the financial stuff works, but all of that is to further our understanding. On this board, we're volunteers. Corey's a volunteer. I have a hard time saying anything negative about Corey on anything, and would only express gratitude, just so you know that, as you and others might raise some issues. So I guess what I'm having trouble, or I have concern that you have some financial troubles there. I have a bad roof. If I have a bad roof, I got to fix it. You know, that's life in the big city when you're a grown-up. So that's, you know, everybody has to deal with that. I don't ask my neighbor to do that. I don't think you're asking the town to come in and pay your bills for you. I don't think you're asking the town to not exercise its rights under the deal that's been in existence forever, even though the town hasn't necessarily done a good job of administering its rights under that deal. The town processes and does your some elements of bookkeeping and payment processing for free, you know, so that at taxpayer expense. So, I don't know where we're going to go with this or what needs to happen. I know that there are people ready, willing, and able to try to assist you in figuring out how to make life better there, which doesn't necessarily involve changing a trustee structure, but more to the point of helping to ensure that you and other residents of Leland Farms, who are Sherborn residents, for whom we all care a great deal and want to be sure life is good, can try to do something. So that's part of what we're trying to figure out here, at least from where I sit. I don't know that, so you're not going to get, I don't know what answers you're looking for from us this evening, but I think I've given you a sense of where I'm seeing things.
Well, I don't think we want to change the procedure. I mean, there are some people that would like to, because like I said, there's a lot of people with different opinions. But, the process, if it's written a certain way, then that's the way it's written. It's also written that, a trustee, each trustee has a 3-year term, and, if the same trustee is appointed for the end of each term, then it's been 5 terms, and, we're just asking you to throw us a bone and maybe try to help us out with somebody new.
I just had a recollection based on something, you just triggered something. One of the models used for this form is the model of housing authorities. The Commonwealth has passed a law that allows communities to set up housing authorities. Housing authorities consist of 5 members, 4 of which are elected. 1 is appointed by the governor. And the 5-member board, all of the members are equal voters on all issues, including high school parking and who gets what room, so you might say, why is the governor involved in a decision as to where a high school kid parks in a housing authority project? And the reason that's stated in the general laws is that there's an interest of the Commonwealth in maintaining the quality of housing authorities and some uniformity across the state. And so when we were writing these documents, we had that model. It was easy to copy it. So we have here 4 elected trustees, but unlike a housing authority, you're elected by only the members of the condo association. Housing authority members are elected by the voters in the town. So who is representing the town in this? The town has a representative to maintain some uniformity. So that was the model I remember that we used.
Okay, thanks, Joey. I think you had something to say.
Hi.
Yeah, if you want to, yeah. If you could say more than just...
But I don't want to get...
Well, if you could say more than a sentence, I think you should.
No, I don't, I'm not setting television.
You don't want that seat, huh?
Hi, I'm Joy Talbert. I live at 9 Leland Farms, and I've been there since it started. I bought in 2000, and I really had nothing to do with the initiation of this meeting, but I feel the need to say that we as a condo association have really tried to be fiscally responsible. When we all bought, our condo fees were really low because they were push load, so they would sell. And so we quickly realized our condo fees were never going to cover our bills. And so now they've more than doubled since we started. And we had a study done to figure out, how are we going to have enough money so that when our roofs fail, we can replace them. And we worked really hard, and we figured it out, and we had this plan that we were going to be putting all this money in, so we'd have money for our roofs. What we didn't know was that the well that was put in couldn't function for us. And I think my understanding is that this was the first, thank you for building it, I'm very happy to live there, the first sort of affordable thing in Sherborn. And because Sherborn has well water, it made it more complicated for our 17 units. You couldn't just have a normal well. So they had to do all these different kinds of things to satisfy the rules and regulations. And so the well just sort of never really functioned. We've been having problems with it all along. And eventually, we got E. coli in it, and the pumps burned out, and we had to keep the ultraviolet lights weren't working. And eventually, the DEP stepped in and said, "This isn't even you can't even have this well. This well is cement. It has to be stainless steel, and it's against all regulations. And you have to replace it, or we're going to fine you." Like this huge amount of money. I want to say it was like $120,000. Could be wrong. Could have been more. So we had to replace the well, which was a huge, huge, huge expense. And I think what's happening now is we at Leland Farms, although we've tried very hard to be financially responsible, are dealing with this well that was not okay to begin with. And then there was the developer who built the place, disappeared, disbanded, was gone, we could never find him. The Sherborn Housing Association disbanded, we couldn't find them. And it was like, we understand that we need to be responsible, but yet we've been dealt with this huge problem that seems to have been a problem since it was put in. Does that make sense? So it sounds to me like I'm a little nervous that my neighbors sound a little bit whiny, and we don't mean to be whining, but it's not that we don't think we're responsible. We've been trying to be very responsible, but all of our reserves are gone, all of the reserves we've been paid into you are gone, there's just nothing left. And now we finally have this well that works, which is great, but we now have no reserves left, and our roofs do need to be replaced. And that's what we were saving for. Does that make sense?
In the maintenance reserve fund, are there still funds there?
Yes, there's a balance.
So there is some maintenance reserve, some of that money that built up is still in the maintenance reserve fund. For, I guess, what, the septic, is that what that's supposed to be for?
Well, it's facilities and roadways, so which would include septic.
Yes,
and
septic, water, roadways.
Yep. And there's 23,000, I think I saw. in
Right,
this.
so since we used all our own money to fix the well, now we can't use that reserve money because we fixed the well. But now our reserve money is gone because it went to the well. Does that make sense? And now we can't use the reserve we're paying you because what we need is roofs, and our well is already fixed.
Well, I mean, that's
Does that
something
make
we've got to
sense?
figure out, but yeah. I mean,
Right, so the way it's written, it was the money, but we didn't have enough money in that reserve to fix the well because it was such a huge expense. So we had to use, cover our own money. So, and I didn't know about the rent. That was new to me today. I thought it was $8 a year like everybody else thought. So that's a new, interesting thing that we will handle. Yay. So anyway, I just wanted to say that. And I think the problem, it's not a personal problem. I don't have a problem, but I think the problem, we're looking at, well, wait a minute, if the town put this well in or okayed it or whatever, whoever said it was okay to begin with, and our town person can't talk to anyone in town and find out how to fix it, then we need to figure out a better way. And maybe the town has no responsibility, but it would be really nice to just at least have a dialogue and find out who's responsible for that original faulty well.
Let me just correct a couple of things. The town did not put in the well. The town had a corporation, which was a developer, created by special act of the legislature that was operated independently
Yeah,
of the
I
town.
understand that, but they don't exist anymore, so we can't talk to them, so that leaves us with you, right?
Before the corporation went dormant, we made sure that all of the, let me phrase it differently. There's a time limit at which you can assert claims.
Okay.
That time limit had long gone, so there was no other recourse. And before the final accounting, if you will, for the construction phase of this was finished, all of those things were looked at, and there was nothing further to be done historically. So the reason why there isn't anybody for you to look at is there is nobody that you can look at legally. Those things are all gone. They're done. The past is over. The time to look back is gone, chronologically. So legally, all those things are closed. That's why when we had the meeting about what to do with the corporation, part of that was to turn over to the town the remaining funds, which we held. And I recall voting, and I think at Corey's request, to use those funds to do work at
We
Leland
did, we
Farms.
used it for the well.
So we did use the money for what it was intended, to support the...
To help defray it.
To help defray the costs. So it wasn't something that you bore entirely alone. I think we gave everything we had. And there was nothing left from that turnover from the corporation. So I don't know what you mean by looking to somebody else. There isn't anybody else to look at or to. Like any other homeowner, if my roof leaks, when you've owned the property for a long period of time, you can't go back after the guy might have built it 100 years ago. I got a building 1775. Should I try and go find who built it in 1775?
But if they don't, if they... Right, it wasn't even 15 years. And if they put a well in that's absolutely not appropriate and the DEP says it's not even okay, how is that not? Go ahead.
I need to clarify a little bit. At the time the well was put into service, and at the time that the water system was operating, and also the septic, there were some glitches in the beginning, but SCHC spent a year making sure that all those glitches had been addressed, and the well and the septic met all the standards of DEP, Board of Health, whatever had to be done at the time that they were turned over to the condo association. Subsequent things occurred. We had to refract the well. We're not the first place in Sherborn with a well that over time has had to have been refract. The water system, we had a test that came back positive for E. coli, and that triggered a very a stern process from DEP about identifying the source of the E. coli. At that point in life, it turned out that our large holding tank that we had did not have an inspection port, which at the time it was installed met the standards of DEP, but by the time the E. coli test came back negative, did not meet the standards of DEP. So it was a question of having to have a holding tank that had an inspection port in it. We were faced, and there was the question of whether or not the source of the E. coli contamination had come through the holding tank. We had a choice to make. It was a choice as to whether or not you install an inspection port in a concrete tank and then check to see whether or not the integrity of the tank existed or whether it had been compromised, or you can install a stainless steel tank that has an inspection port in it. And it was the judgment of the entire Board of Trustees that it was the more value-laden decision was to replace the stainless steel tank. The issue, things happen, and and I will rephrase this or restate it, at the time those systems were installed and turned over, they were functioning according to all the standards of the time, but things change and things happen.
Okay, George, I think, had his hand up first, and then you might...
The situation that the condominium association found itself in relative to the water is very is parallel to the situation that Woodhaven found itself in for the last 4 or 5 years. The regulations from the state keep coming in stronger and stronger. They're more strict. We at Woodhaven have had to replace filters, replace not just the filters, but the whole filter system. And you are well aware of the kind of expense that the Woodhaven tenants have now funded. You provided a loan, you co-signed a loan for Woodhaven, and the rents went up, and we're paying that loan off. But it's primarily a function that's out of our control and out of the condominium association's control. If the state raises the the standards for public drinking water, then that's what we have to do. And that's what they have to do. We didn't ask you to pay for it at Woodhaven, we paid for it. The tenants paid for it. And I think that that's, as Paul had rightly pointed out, it's unfortunate that the roof goes at the same time the well goes, but that happens to a lot of us.
Yeah, I mean, I thought Ms. Talbot's comments were very helpful, and I think, you know, what I'm hearing is not necessarily a request that the town pay for something, but that the town work with them in a way to help them pay for it and to do it in a way that is doable. And so I'm hearing some distress about all the things that have happened that are going to cost money. And, you know, we've also, I think, today, maybe it's a revelation to people that some of the funds that were supposed to come the town's direction haven't come the town's direction over time. And we want to fix that from the town standpoint, and I think we also want to see if there's a way to help them with the issues that they're facing so that everybody kind of goes along and you know, survives all these difficulties.
I think Corey put something on the table when she first started to talk about a system to catch up on the back payments that we do. I noticed some facial expressions from the owners, from the unit owners. You know, well, we're in the hole now, but we've got this. Now you're trying to up our rent. Well, I'd like to be able to say I'm in the hole and I don't want my taxes to go up. That's essentially what we're.
We already pay taxes, though.
I understand that, but what I'm saying to you is, as an owner of a piece of property, and that's what you are. You're not a tenant, you're an owner. And as an owner, I have to meet the owner's responsibilities if I want to keep the property up and pay. And I have to juggle my expenses, stop my prescriptions, and not have food if I want to stay in the house. If I don't want to do any of those things, then I have to go. I have to sell the house and move on to something else. And that's essentially what is facing them. Now, I think the town can, as Corey pointed out, the town can, in fact, work out a reasonable payment system. Is that what you were talking about? And that payment system involves rent and back payment of reserve fund contributions. That's what I think you can do. But beyond that, I don't see, except working on various ways to get the best possible prices and that kind of thing, I don't see what else you can do.
Well, if I could,
Sure.
I do want to remind us all of the vision that led to Leland Farms, which was to provide diversity and the knowledge that we were going to seek affordable units because we wanted and welcomed people of all different levels. And part of maintaining that diversity, I would suggest, if things are as difficult as stated, we need a kindler, gentler approach that's going to try and work with people to keep them here, to keep them in their homes, to keep the system afloat. I feel some responsibility to making Leland Farms a success because I spent 10 years trying to get it to where it is now. So I don't want to subscribe to the message that if you can't afford, you know, move out. That's not where I'm at.
I didn't say that about them. I said that about myself. If I can't afford to meet all my obligations, and the one obligation I can lower is my housing costs, then that's what I have to do.
Well, I want to do what I can to help.
Well, so does Corey, and so does everyone that I've dealt with and been involved in this wants to.
I think
This gentleman go one step further. When we talk about doubling the cost of living in Leland Farms, those costs have doubled for every homeowner wherever they live. I mean, I'm not living on the same housing costs per year that I did 20 years ago or 15 years ago. If I own a house, I have to expect that those costs are going to come in.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of obvious. I mean, the tax discussion we had at the beginning, Peter raised the fact that the taxes have gone up so much. Everybody, this is not endemic to Woodhaven. This is a complaint that everybody has. I think it's a fair complaint for them to make. Our costs are really high. We didn't expect that. And you're right that that's true for everybody, but I think, you know, the better point is to work it out in a way that works. Michael, you had a comment?
Couple comments. First, real estate, like stocks, there's risk involved. I mean, you know, anything you buy, you gotta do your homework, you know, and we've had a lot of problems, okay, unexpectedly. But, you know, you got I just can't see us landing the town. The other question I had, I was just wondering how the town came about deciding to have 7 market units and 10 low-income units.
Mathematics.
That was the highest number I think they could get to where the pro formas were.
Right, in order to fund the project,
Right.
that was the max. The goal was to get as many affordable units as possible, because that's what we wanted to provide, the diversity here in the community. And then when you sat down and you took the costs and you added up how were we going to make it all balance, just as Mike said, that was the...
And if I remember right, I think that house on South Main Street was a later addition to that project, wasn't it? And that helped tip the number of units even a little bit more?
No, that's part of the original.
Yes,
It was in the original development, but I think it was added.
No, actually, you know, what you're referring to is the Merrill House that
Yeah.
faces the town. No, the original design of the project did not include that property. But there was a hang-up over the issue of 2 accesses because of safety of fire equipment. And what happened, as you may recall, was there was a very sad, fortunately, the property was unoccupied at the time, but there was a fire on Christmas Eve, and the gentleman who lived in the house had been moved into assisted living, or I think ultimately passed on, and the estate offered that house at a rather friendly price, and it was available to the town to buy and then be transferred and attached to the parcel, and that allowed us to have a theoretical dual access. The idea was that a fire truck was going to go up the hill and out the driveway of the Merrill House. Since that time, the fire department has decided that they can operate within the space that's there. They can turn around and do their work, so.
And you had another comment, I think.
Last comment.
It's not.
With only 7 market units, that's a concern because there's less people to choose from. Quality person that has the time, the energy to be a trustee. Because a lot of from my experience, the market owners that have lived there have been retirees, people who work 2 jobs. They don't have the time or the energy. So with only having 7 unit owners, market units, we don't have a real great big, a lot of choices of who can be our trustees and be the leaders of the community. So I think the town should keep that in mind in the future.
You talk about for another project or another development that gets done. I mean, I'm not sure there's much we can do about that, the way the structure is now.
Right now, we have a difficult time filling those seats with good quality people that have the time and the energy to do a good job. And I don't think, you know.
I think, yeah, I mean, you said it before, the more you put into it, the more you'll get out of it, right? So, I mean, I think
Well, yeah, but I mean,
that's the same philosophy.
A lot of people are working 2 jobs, and they can't be a trustee there. You know, and,
I
Can
agree
I
with
just
that.
comment too? Can I make a comment to the
Yeah.
town? My name's Mary Beth Beers. I grew up in the town. Happy to be there. I bought a year ago. I approached the owner of the unit I'm in. I happen to be affordable. I was just elected to the trust, trying to make the best of my knowledge here. One of the things, my comment to the town is, when I contacted the town, and actually it was you, Mr. Williams, I contacted, first I was told I wasn't available to buy it because I wasn't a first-time homeowner. And there was a lot of red tape with the town. I'm not sure the town knows what they're doing with Leland Farms. I was told that it was up to the unit owner's lawyer to qualify me to buy. Again, so if the town's interest is this great in this property, and we're all happy to be there, the town has to give us some help, and we will do the best we can. But it took a lot of effort on my part. I had many conversations with people. I called Cambridge Housing. They said it would be a shame if Sherborn's not helping, because they do have invested interest in property. So the town wasn't clear at all. I went to town hall. First, I was told, you don't qualify, you're not a first-time homeowner. I asked somebody at the time, is that in fact the way that the wording of the, no, that's not. So the town, as I could see tonight, nobody's really sure who's on the board, if there's a board. I was under the assumption, I think, that the rest of us, Sherborn Housing Committee's dissolved. If you're the sole member, maybe we can all do something better for the town as well as for us. But as a new owner to the association last year, the town doesn't seem to have a real handle on how this is set up. Because again, I was told misinformation numerous times. I contacted you, friends contacted you, real estate people contacted you, and I just was given misinformation. I'm not saying you did it intentionally. I'm not blaming anybody here.
I don't believe I gave you any misinformation. I'm not sure.
No,
what
you gave me information, but what I was given, you did give me information that was right, not.
And I think the previous time that the town went out, it was a first-time home buyers issue, and the town was active in marketing that unit. And if you remember, this unit, we chose to be the monitoring agent. So basically, we just had to set what the, inform the selling party what the, I don't know what you call it, the income limit was. But when the monitoring agent, which we worked with town council on, you are in a back seat, and it's all on the sellers. I mean, and the seller's attorney was the one that had to vet the people who were coming through to make sure that they qualify and that the final person that they present to the town qualified.
Maybe something we could do is have just a one-pager that tells people who are interested what to do, or have a resource so that people don't stumble as much.
Well, it depends on when the unit comes up, whether we want to be the monitoring agent
That's something
or...
we select each time?
Yes.
I see.
And we did select that.
In my experience working for many towns, towns are not good at running housing issues at all. Towns really don't know how to operate housing. That's why we created the Sherborn Housing Corporation. That's why we went to the legislature. We made the case that we needed an organization that would be focused on housing. But unfortunately, everybody who was involved with that corporation resigned or went on.
I understand.
So the organization that would have normally been the one that you interface with is dormant. There really wasn't the interest in the town to, and I don't think there still is, to be active housing landlords. But there are structures like this corporation that many communities have that do that. So you're dealing with a situation where the town's really not equipped to deal with housing issues directly. And yet the organization that would be equipped is dormant.
And the town
And that's
has,
why there's
and the
confusion.
town has affordable housing, so you have it. So now you have to know what you're doing with it for people to be able to buy into it.
I think what she's saying is following up on your comment about the purpose of this
Yeah, the purpose of
development.
it, right.
We are not following through on that purpose if we don't have a way to make it easier for somebody who wants to move in to figure out if they qualify to move in.
Excuse me, Mike. Previous time that the previous unit that went up and the town decided to market it themselves, from what I understood, was a bad process. So this last time, the discussion was the same thing. That's why we decided to be the monitoring agents of it.
Right. I think it's helpful to have the information, at least for me it is.
Yeah.
Excuse me, could I kind of chime in, because I alluded to it earlier when I was talking about some suggestions I had, and this ties into the issue that Mary Beth raised. if I could go ahead and make those suggestions, because you sound like you're kind of winding down.
Well, that's what I was going to ask the other board members. I mean, this has been more of a fact-finding mission today than a decision-making, and I guess the question is, how much longer do we want to go on this? And
I'd like to hear Corey's suggestions.
okay, and then shut it off, or what's the?
This gentleman's front row.
Take a couple more hands, is that the idea?
Sounds like it. Why not?
I mean, I'll do this as long as you want, I'm just, you know, I'm looking to both of you for how much.
I don't need
How
much
much
more,
do you-
but
what
I'm
you doing with
curious to hear what Corey has to say about the last transaction, or whatever you're talking, and this gentleman, and
So
so.
on the issue of what we do tonight, I have to say, I was handed like 2 or 3 inches of paper as I walked in. No criticism is intended, there was a lot of paperwork that had to be assembled. But in order to get ready for this meeting, I, like what Peter said before, you really need to read all the stuff and be up to date on stuff. And being handed stuff and then walking in that wasn't in the packet that I had to prepare for tonight's
The
meeting.
primary documents were sent out last week on Thursday, and we've also distributed them multiple times over the past
That's
6
okay.
months.
And I mean, and Paul, you brought in a revenue flyer that none of us had seen and then talked about it. I mean, that happens sometimes, but I think we've had a constructive discussion today, but I don't think we should be making any decisions if that's where you're going.
That's where I'm going,
Yeah.
is that I actually want to read everything I mean, I have here property cards for different housing.
It's fascinating reading.
I mean, I don't know if it's relevant or not relevant, but there's a lot of it, and I want to be able to read it all.
Yeah, so I
So
think what we're going to do is
don't
we're
wanna
going
get
to
to
take
the-
a couple more comments and then schedule it for a future
Yeah.
meeting if we can.
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
That's where I was going.
Okay with that?
Sounds good.
All right.
Yep.
Corey, your mic again.
Yeah, I've got basically 5 comments, and I'll kind of expand on them with some examples. And these are suggestions that I think, regardless of who the representative of the town is on the Board of Trustees at Leland Farms, I think these things would all be improvements and steps forward. The first one is that I think that information that comes to Town Hall through the Board of Selectmen ought to be forwarded to whomever the representative is. It's important to keep them informed of what's going on. I will have to say a number of years ago, this was not David Williams, it was a former town administrator. I walked into a Board of Trustees meeting and was quite shocked when the door opened and the town administrator walked into the meeting. He had been contacted by one of the residents, came to the meeting, was perfectly welcome to come to the meeting, but I was totally caught by surprise and felt that as the town's representative, at the very least, I should have been informed about what was going on. So I think there needs to be more sharing of information from the Board of Selectmen to the representative. Number 2, I would recommend that there be a quarterly meeting of the representative with the town administrator. David and I talked about this. I asked if he thought it would be onerous or helpful, and he thought it would be quite helpful and very doable. Likewise, I suggested that there be an annual meeting between the representative and the Board of Selectmen, just to kind of get up to speed, see if there are any new issues, talk about anything that comes up. Fourth, I have already referenced this, but I think it would be very helpful if there could be simple billing from the town to the property manager of all of the financial obligations with the updates of the CPIs and all of those things. And fifth, I thought that there should be a closer monitoring, and I use that word advisedly because I realize it has some legal significance in affordable housing, but that there should be more of an assumption of supervision over the transfer of affordable units. I think that town built Leland Farms in large part to provide affordable housing. I think it has an obligation to maintain that affordability. We did have an instance several years ago, once again before David, where 2 units had come on the market, and the town administrator at the time had taken it upon himself to decide. There's a first right of refusal, as you know, for the Board of Selectmen if when a certain time period is expired, if the unit hasn't been sold. And the town administrator had simply assumed that the selectmen would not be interested in doing that and had simply declined it, and they were about to head out to the open marketplace. I ran into him in the sandwich shop, and he happened to tell me that. And as Paul may remember, it happened right before town meeting. And we were able to kind of pull that one out of the fire. And actually, the town wound up buying those 2 units and reselling them, but it was the way to retain the affordability, because once they escape affordability, they become market rate units, and we no longer have credit for them in the town. And I think, as Mary Beth said, just even a clear instruction sheet of who does what and when and where to go. I'm not necessarily suggesting that the town has to run a lottery every time something becomes available, but I think it would be very helpful to have a resource to provide the necessary information and to do everything they can reasonably to maintain the affordability of those units. Those are my 5 things.
One more.
Okay, I just want to add on to what Joe was saying. I'm Bill Thomas, I'm a resident there. I used to own a home many long years, and I was never prepared for a lot of what's happening here. And I'm talking about the quality of the structures. And these are no way, we referred to earlier, of the same quality that Woodhaven is. And, you know, in addition to the well, and I guess if we're having problems with the well, and we had to spend $30,000, $40,000, I would think quite a few other people in Sherborn have the same problem. The other thing, we'd probably spend $25,000 on rotting wood. And, you know, a structure that's 14 years old. I had a house that was built in 1930, and I probably spent $300, you know. And as far as, I would just sell my house, it's not so easy to sell your house over there. And now, with an assessment looming and with a loan coming out, and it was mentioned about the roof, it's like a disease within a year. All the shingles start curling up, and they claim all 4 units, 4 or 5 units have to be redone. It's just amazing that all this stuff is happening, and all at once, and it's probably over 3 or 4 years. So I think, you know, I don't know whose fault, why, but, you know, those are problems. And affordable, it's going to be very difficult for people to come in and buy that, and they say, oh yeah, but you have to take over the assessment, you have to take over the loan. So the affordability has to be looked at, and I appreciate your mentioning that.
Can I just make one little summary? I actually spoke with Bob Delaney, I don't know how long ago, but I know from what he told me that there was a $500,000 grant from the federal, there was a federal grant through the state to build Leland Farms, and
It's a partial, that was only part of the cost, and it was a community
Right.
block development grant.
right, they needed to add the market units to help supplement the funding.
It covered
Right.
the soft costs, as you may recall,
Right.
the upfront soft development costs.
And basically, you know, there was obviously a desire for the affordable, you know, it was put forth as affordable units because they wanted to have affordable units in Sherborn. And what we have to realize is that there are people who live there and that need to, they still are affordable unit owners, and the fees, there's aspects that are no longer affordable, and some people are going from month to month just not knowing how they're going to pay their next condo fee. There's a woman who has cancer who can't work anymore, is in that situation. There's some other people in that situation, and if, you know, as Mr. Durant has said, you know, the town really should take an interest in something like that, and keep it in mind when, you know, about getting involved a little bit more, or consider, you know, what can be said or to help change some things. So, you know, if we could have another meeting to discuss, you know, certain aspects of that, and keep things, you know, heading in a positive direction as opposed to the direction we're heading in now, I think that would be great.
I think what we're going to do is close this off now, and I think ask David to schedule maybe even a workshop-type session. I don't think it would be a public meeting in the sense that we'd ask for comment. I think it would be, it's open meeting, so people can show up and observe if they want to, but does that suit the board's wishes on that?
Yeah.
I mean, the question is what more, one of the things that we don't have is we hear the stress or the challenges faced by some of the homeowners there and the property. We don't have enough of that knowledge yet now, and so I don't know whether that's something that the George Shays of the world or other people would be willing to help learn about and be able to come back to us with that kind of information.
Peter, I'm thinking we're almost at an earlier stage than that. I think we heard so much information tonight that I think we have to look at what the issues are in front of us and see if there are things we want to tackle or things we don't think are worth tackling, and then get down into the weeds on the stuff that we want to tackle.
Yeah, okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, and I think we can also get a sort of our sensibilities of various things. My sensibilities might be different than what you might have in terms of what's good for the town, you know, and that sort of thing.
There's a lot of constituents here. There's a lot of different kinds of constituencies here.
That's right.
Just an idea that in one of the towns I work for, we submitted an application for a community block development grant to refurbish private housing with a nominal mortgage back that's forgiven. It's federal funds that come through. It's a complicated federal process, but the point is that I could see making an effort to get a community block development grant, get some federal funds to maybe do some upgrades at Leland Farms. That property owners would have to sign some paperwork for it, but the feds would provide.
But that's more of a solution on the bigger thing that's still it's another step down the road.
At the next session. I mean, there might be one solution, or there might be other ideas, but that's, I mean, those kind of ideas are great. So do you agree to have
Oh, yes, yeah.
a
Sure.
workshop?
Just trying to figure out a way to help people.
Thanks everybody for their input.
We want to help you out. I mean, figure out something.
Yeah, really appreciate it.
Sherborn residents, we care.
We have.
We love that.
Have this discussion.
Well, we learned a lot.
It's starting to have communication and to not have any communication whatsoever. We had no idea. We said the town is involved. We knew about the leasehold of the land, but nothing else, nothing. And we read all the documents and everything.
Thank you.
But this really clears a lot of things up, and we felt that I once wrote a letter probably in 2006 just to the Selectmen's office, and I never got a reply because it was apparent then that things were falling apart. There were small things, but I saw them going down. And there we owned house for 45 years.
Thanks, man. You know, we've got a long agenda, so we're gonna jump right on to the next thing, but thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks very much.
That's terrific.
Okay.
Great to see you. Yeah.
So David, I think we're on to the town administrator's report unless somebody needs a break or anything. Yeah,
But
okay.
go ahead without me, I'm just going to run to the men's room.
Well, I think we're going to do appointments next, though, so. David, is there something we can do before the appointments? Maybe do recycling first and then?
Yeah,
Okay.
we could pull up
Carol,
Carol Rubenstein.
Carol, can we go to you next on the recycling, please? Thanks.
Great to
There's,
see you, gentlemen.
We've been talking.
Thanks, guys.
See you, Luke.
We've been
See you, Rick.
talking recently about the townwide mailing policy, and this is one of the things that kind of came out of that discussion, is that the recycling committee has a mailing. The recycling committee has a mailing going out about food waste, and it needs to go, or we figured out that it could go into the tax bill mailing without any extra postage. So under the state law, it requires a vote of the Board of Selectmen to include an outside material in that tax bill.
Okay.
So Carol's just going to give you a heads up of what that material is.
That's this flyer?
Yes, that's the flyer, except that it's green.
Okay.
It's the flyer that I had prepared early July for the townwide mailing that was all folded and ready to go out for a townwide mailing when I was told that it couldn't go out. So it's been sitting in the Selectmen's office, just sitting, and Nancy Hess was nice enough to tell me about 3 weeks ago that she was preparing her tax bills, and it would be fine with her if I wanted to put something in her envelopes with the tax bills, but I needed to get your permission to do that. So I said, well, you know, we have this informational piece about the food waste collection. It's all folded and everything, but,
So you just slip it right in with her mailing?
right.
Sounds like a
but-
great
That's awesome. That's the way to do it, yeah.
Okay, you would think that, right, but, okay, so I assumed that I was going to get permission, and I spent about 5 hours over the course of a number of days stuffing envelopes.
No, thank you.
Okay, so I just want to tell you that over the course of those 5 days 5 hours, I had a lot of time to think. And so I have a lot of things to report to you,
Okay.
my thoughts. So the first thing that occurred to me was that as a leader of a committee, I never ask volunteers to do something that I wouldn't do myself. And that includes picking up litter at the transfer station, sweeping floors, cleaning filthy, dirty things that people bring to the swap shop so that they get presentable and attractive to people who might take them, standing for hours on end asking people to sign petitions, standing at the household hazardous waste collection for 4 hours every year, tracking people's waste, as well as all the administrative things that are involved in being a committee chair. But I have to tell you that stuffing envelopes is a colossal waste of time, and I would never ask anybody to stuff envelopes. And I don't think that you would want to do it. And not only that, it's worth $360 to have the post office mail it.
Nancy, how do you get the tax bills in the envelopes? What's that? You stuff them, okay.
We have a stuffer too, and I'd like to thank Carol because as Carol stuffed her stuffer, she put my tax stuffer in many of the envelopes.
It's just as easy to put two things in the envelope as one.
We do have a senior citizen that comes because I try not to have my staff that's doing collection stuff take time out to do those. But we do some stuffing. The summer is very slow, and I try to have stuffers ready so that if somebody's going to be there to answer the phone and wait on the counter, why pay the printer to do that stuff when somebody could be doing that between their jobs and so forth. But most of it is done by our senior helper, and then I don't let anybody but staff deal with the tax bills, and those we put in as well. There are some towns that do pay someone else. Each bill goes in a separate envelope by a machine, and they get mailed out with no correction or anything, and then you get them back with the, you've already paid for the postage, whatever, you stuff them and make the corrections and so forth. And we save a lot of money by multiple bills going into one envelope. In fact, one year, we actually counted to get an idea of how many we saved by stuffing them. And it was about a third of the bills because we were able to multiple stuff. So, and it also allows us to control, and I might as well make a pitch while I'm here now. We're hoping to get them out, as you heard tonight. Yvonne's done a wonderful job of getting classification and all of that together. She's first in the state in line to get the tax rate approved.
It's fantastic.
Had the DOR in here this week. Her stuff is great. So we're not anticipating any problems. It'll have to go to my vendor to get turned around into a collection package. But we're hoping to have them out the third week of September, which brings me to my normal pitch that hopefully people who don't have the mortgage company pay their bill will pay them, because this is the dry time for the town. And cash flow is important. It saves us all money if we don't have to borrow. So, and they're not getting big bucks with that money in the bank, so it'd be really helpful if people have the ability to pay those when they get the tax bill, so that we keep our cash flow going and can get into the bigger collection time without having to borrow.
So in case people couldn't hear that because Nancy's not at a microphone, our tax collector is advising that this is the dry time for funds, and when the tax bills go out in the third week or so of September, she would appreciate anybody who was willing and able to pay their tax bill quickly to keep the funds flowing to the town. Keep us, so we don't have to go into borrowing, short-term borrowing.
I have one more comment.
Okay, thanks, Carol.
It's about the policy, not really about the insert in the tax bills, but it's relevant to what I was saying before. I had a mailing, or I have had a mailing in the past on Household Hazardous Waste Day, which I hold every September. I, of course, did not send it out this year because of the policy. Instead, I asked the Council on Aging to include the announcement in their link, which was another suggested way to get information out. Usually after I send out the mailing, I get a flurry of reservations online or by phone call. Nothing happened after the COA link was published with my information. I'm 2 weeks away from the collection day, and by the way, everybody out there listening, it's September 20th from 9 to 1 at the Highway Garage. I have 5 people on the reservation list. We have a minimum payment to the contractor of $4,800, and that will be a real waste of money if we don't have our usual complement of participants.
Did we get the, did we do an ad on, it's on the website, but did we do an ad on the Dover Sherborn cable?
No, we don't have an ad on Dover Sherborn, but we did have the press release appear in today's Dover Sherborn Press, and hopefully it will be continuing. I have asked Dover Sherborn to continue it. It will be a calendar item in the Hometown Weekly, but I noticed that their calendar doesn't do more than, I think, a week in advance, so we're not going to get great play there. But I will send something to DSC TV.
Pat?
Can I ask Carol, if someone cannot be here for that weekend, can they contact you and drop stuff off somewhere ahead of time? Or
I have an arrangement with other towns where people can make arrangements with me to go to another town to take their waste to another collection.
And it would be at that other town's collection date, is that correct?
Yeah.
Gotcha.
All right, good, thank you.
So that's all I want to say. You need to vote to approve the insert in the tax
Oh,
bill.
we haven't done that yet, have we? Get distracted with other things. Okay, so do we have a motion to approve putting the insert in the tax bill?
So moved.
Second.
Second, all in favor? All right, thanks, Carol. Thank you, Nancy. All right, I think we're up to appointments.
Yep, the next item is appointments for consideration. We only have the Conservation Commission up. There are 3 seats available, and we had 4 applicants: Steve Gaskin, Jessica Pettit, Carol McGarry, Susan Tyler. And then basically we would be, the recommendation of the Concom was that the board appoint Steve Gaskin, or reappoint Steve Gaskin, reappoint Jessica Pettit, and then appoint the new applicant, Carol McGarry. And then on your sheet, you have the lengths of the terms. And you could, if you were going to do a motion, you could do it one of 2 ways. You could do individual appointments. You could make the motion all at one time, or you could make a motion to uphold the recommendation of the Conservation Commission. And Michael Lesser from the Concom is here if you had any questions about their deliberations.
Let's get the motion signed. Well, I don't know. I mean, do you have a presentation, Michael, or do you just want to hear what we're doing?
No, we made our recommendations.
Yeah, I mean, and your recommendations are to reappoint and to appoint Carol McGarry. you know, and you and I did have an offline conversation. I was a little concerned about attendance on at least one of the nominees, but you assured me that that person is committed and fully engaged, so.
Yeah, everybody knows that's.
Can I make a motion? Yeah, go for it. I move that we accept the Conservation Commission's recommended appointments as follows. Steve Gaskin and Jessica Pettit for 3-year terms expiring June 15, 2017, and Carol McCary for a 2-year term expiring June 15, 2016.
My second.
Okay, any further discussion up here?
No.
Okay, all in favor?
Thank you very much.
Okay.
The other,
Meeting, yep, great.
the other appointments that we were looking to bring forward at the next meeting, September 18th, we have 2 seats available for the Personnel Board,
Oh, just trying to figure that out.
and we have two people interested in being appointed. That and Fred Abdallah, the chair of the Personnel Board, is aware of both of those folks, has already weighed in on recommending one of those. The 2 names were Tom Twining and Julia Jacobson.
And I think I'd asked you, do we have any background information on them?
Yes, I do, and I was going to supply that with
For next
the
week.
packet if you were going to schedule this for the 18th.
I think we should schedule it for the next meeting.
We can't move these appointments?
What does that mean?
No, they weren't.
Because it's not scheduled on the agenda, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm not ready to vote on those anyway, Paul. I don't have enough information. I mean, I want people on the Personnel Board to have some HR experience and some, some capacity to address those kinds of issues. And
I've collected information
I
from
want to get
both.
some of that background information.
I know both of them. One as a former selectman, the other one is a former member of the Conservation Commission, and is a lawyer at McDermott, Will, and Emery.
Okay.
The thing is, those candidates were not posted with the agenda, so they can't be moved because they weren't posted. That's the Concom. The Concom names were posted.
And those are the only 2 candidates?
Those are the 2
Personnel.
candidates for personnel, but I wanted to see if that's what you wanted to
Yeah.
bring forward at
Yeah.
the next meeting.
The Personnel Committee has occasionally gone without a full roster, isn't that correct?
This will bring them up to full strength.
Yeah, no, I think they're great candidates, and I think that, but
Yeah, I mean,
we're not on the agenda, so.
I almost feel like I'd rather interview the candidates, to be honest with you. I want to make sure we get people on the Personnel Committee who are able and willing to work with all kinds of employees and employee issues in a productive way and are not mission or agenda driven.
We can request.
Whatever you need to do, that's by our being
Okay.
selectmen, so.
Do you think we can get people into?
Yeah, I believe so.
Yeah, I would rather do that before. These are pretty important appointments. That's an important committee, and it deals
Okay.
with issues that can be kind of controversial.
Okay. So we'll schedule it for the
18th, if
18th.
possible, yeah.
Let's bundle, when we have that agenda item, David, let's bundle a little more your new role, related to personnel issues. Just bundle that as part of the conversation.
Okay.
So that we are all comfortable with the authority, the responsibilities and authorities you have, and how that relates to what our folks on personnel are doing.
Yeah, I think we're.
So you're all dancing to the same, oars are pulling in the same direction.
We've been
Dancing with the same oars.
Yeah, the oars are pulling in the same direction.
It seems.
Imagine your kids or
Yeah.
rowing away.
Yeah, right oar.
You're there with the.
Yeah.
It seems like we've been talking to council almost every day, trying to sort out
Yes.
something new
Yeah.
on that. So that would be good.
So the latest that you have on that would be great.
But one thing we need to get on a future agenda pretty soon, I think, David, is goals and objectives, and also at least a structure for your review, your annual review,
Right.
and also follow up with you on other personnel reviews, just to make sure that everything's happened the way it's supposed to happen. Maybe that's a discussion, at least that part of it,
Right.
for the 18th.
All the evaluations have been done, and then
Then we don't need that
from last
discussion
year.
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to try to make
You just sent us a big email with a whole bunch of attachments that I haven't looked at yet.
But those-
that relates to this topic, correct?
Yeah, and they were going to be scheduled for the 18th, I believe. That's
Okay,
when,
good.
And then,
That's the policies, yeah.
but the evaluations, I wanted to implement a different form, and I'm meeting with department heads next week, and I'll give them that new form, and just so they're aware of it. And it's a whole new process. I mean, it's a whole new round of evaluations already.
Mhm. And what's the form based on?
It's just, it's performance evaluation form. It's different from
Just
the two or three
a style
page.
you're more comfortable with, is that what it is?
Yeah, that can identify goals a little more clearly, and it's not just a grade of 1 through 10 and checking off, as opposed to a little more narrative and just, I think, a more constructive evaluation.
Okay.
But that email that you sent us, David, had policy stuff in it, but it also had goals and objectives related to you, yes?
Yeah.
So you
and
just got to remind, because I think, I flipped through it real quickly.
What?
But you asked for some input by the 12th or something, did I remember that correctly?
I think that was so I could bring that forward into, like, to get it into the packet and out to you.
So
if
we
you
need to
had
do a little
input
homework,
on-
is all I'm saying.
Right, and I think that was for the goals, right?
I don't remember what it was.
Yeah.
I didn't open it, but there was a whole bunch of attachments that.
Yeah.
Well, some of it is
Careful thought.
continuation of policies that we've already been looking at.
One of the things
Yeah.
I'd asked Dave to do was send me Word documents for a couple of the policies that I was going to take a crack at editing based on comments that we had at the past meetings. David said he's done some of that editing already, and I think he just sent all of the documents around to all of us for further comment. Is that what it is? Yeah.
And you need that by the 12th, if you can get it.
I mean,
Or I'm just trying to remember, I just don't want to.
I think that was specifically.
I need a reminder sometimes. Somebody's got to hit me in the back of the head
specifically
once in a
for
while.
if you wanted goals to be added.
Oh, okay.
And that you thought should be added, you could get them to me, and then I would incorporate them, or you could bring them to the meeting and we just amend the document.
Okay, yeah.
Gotcha.
Okay.
So I could be a slacker for a little bit longer, just
Yeah,
procrastinate.
once this meeting's over.
Till
Yeah, there you go.
Till the
Got a
afternoon of the
break
18th.
until at least tomorrow, I think. Okay. Anything more that we've got, David, on appointments?
No.
Or, our town administrator report?
I was just going to mention that we did have the building inspector leave as of August 31st. We have Bob Speroni. He's a retired building commissioner. He's going to fill in a role. I estimate it'll be about 2 weeks before we have a new inspector on, who's also a certified building commissioner. We've gone through the interview process. There were 2 that really stood out, and Diane and I interviewed one, and he seemed to be a really good fit. So,
Okay. And do you get references and everything on him?
yeah. I mean, it checked out his own references, checked out my references. Walter, weighed in on these 2.
Walter knows him?
Yeah. He doesn't know this person personally, but he reviewed the resumes and the
Oh, good.
applications
Good
with
for him. That's
Yeah.
Can I make a comment here?
Yeah, sure.
The building inspector is a Board of Selectmen appointment, but we've been trying to create a new system here and empower the town administrator. And so I am personally delighted, and I think the community should be quite impressed that we've turned these kinds of things over to the town administrator. He's got a background in human resources. Appointments of public officers need to be done right, and does require vetting. It does require a lot of work. It does require a lot of interviewing. And thank God that you have stepped in and that you're here and that you're doing this. And I'm quite confident that there will be a good building inspector that will result from this. when I compare this process with the process that I was involved with that led to the selection of prior building inspectors, I have to say this is much better. It's a great improvement.
Thank you.
Yeah, I agree. I also wanted to just add, because I know we didn't give Walter a proclamation or anything. I mean, he basically, left our employ and he's still working someplace else. But I did want to say I appreciate his service to the town. It was, I don't know how many years, but it was quite a while, 10 years. And, he stepped into what's not necessarily an easy role. He had to make decisions that people didn't always agree with, and I thought he handled himself very well with that. And I got to work with him pretty closely on the Board of Appeals. And, I do think he's a very talented guy, and we're going to miss having his knowledge and experience, but I think sounds like you found somebody who can come in and seamless transition and keep us on a good plane.
Yeah, we've talked about, online access to permits, that kind of thing, updating records, and so it'll always be improving and changing, and Walter is fully available to us, so we'll continue talking with Walter.
Mm-hmm.
He would just be involved in another town, and we'll use him as a resource as needed.
I also had directly thanked Walter and exchanged a few notes of appreciation to him for the service for the town, so I'll repeat that publicly if he is listening or hears about it.
I hope he's not listening to this, but
That he is thanked for his years of service to the town, and I wish him the very best going forward.
I have nothing to say about Walter except good luck, miss you. Tough shoes to fill. David, how's life as a treasurer?
It's rich.
There you go. Cash flow, I wonder if we could get a little, Nancy mentioned the drought coming towards us. Do we have like a little cash flow forecast, or is there something in development that maybe
Just
you could share with us at some point? That'd be terrific.
Yeah. Actually, we're cutting back on the use of the advisor that we were bringing in from the outside, because there's not a lot for him to do. So he was only doing 5 hours on Mondays, and so now he's not going to come back until the 22nd. So he'll come in and then double check the recons at that point. But we may only have to bring him in once a month.
Can I make a comment here?
yeah.
I think part of the hope that at least I had, and I think it was raised by Peter some time ago, is that the consultant not just add up numbers and reconcile bank accounts, but that we get a sense of where the community ought to be moving with regard to these financial offices.
Mm-hmm.
So that the consultant shouldn't be looked at in terms of doing clerical work, but should be looked at as someone who could provide some insight as to how we ought to be doing business in the community.
Mm-hmm.
The government study committee is exploring that actively, aren't they?
Yeah, as far as a structure, and I think the first hurdle would be making the treasurer position appointed, and in speaking with the consultants, that's going to be their recommendation, that you have an appointed treasurer, collector, finance director structure. That's the model that they would recommend. But I have told them that we were going to be looking for a report of recommendations. And they've been looking through everything that we have, bank accounts and others so I don't have that in writing yet, but I think we told them when they started 90 days, we wanted something back from them.
Yeah. Good.
It was Peter's idea, I'm just repeating.
Sounds like they're having more fun in the meeting next door. There's a lot of laughter.
Well, we can start cracking jokes. No, we better not.
I think we're almost done. Do we have selectmen reports at all? Or are you done?
I'm done, thank you.
So anybody have a selectmen report to report? No, I'm glad to be back here live. I think the remote participation worked pretty well the last time, but it's much easier to hear when you're in the room and see faces.
Yeah.
But I do think it was more successful than when you tried it earlier in the summer, Paul.
Well, one of the big differences is we had people come up here.
Okay.
So rather than trying to pick up speakers all over the room, and I thank Pat Cassell and Dave for putting that together, but you were able to, it was a much more intimate setting because the speakerphone here could actually pick up things much better.
Yeah.
Everything just worked much better.
And as I did tell Pat, there was a fairly wide variety and quality of sound depending on who was speaker. Women's voices were easier to hear. People who were a certain distance from the microphone were easier to hear. A couple of the speakers kind of swallowed their words and had deep voices, were much harder to understand. So I think there's a learning curve on that too, in terms of instructing people where they've got to be to make it audible, most audible.
I don't know if you went back and checked the video, but the video sounds great.
Good,
okay. You know, your voice is coming through fine.
Excellent.
Onto the video and everything.
Now that I've done remote participation and you've done remote
Peter,
participation.
I'll see you later, I'm out of here.
I think we should require Peter to participate remotely,
it's
just so
probably-
that you can.
It's probably going to happen. You'll be calling me Grandpa.
Oh, good for you.
Yeah.
All right.
I will say, Paul ran the meeting very well in your absence and on schedule,
I had
too,
no
I
doubt.
might
I had no
add.
doubt. Well, we're only a few hours behind.
Yeah.
We have some minutes to approve. Do we have motion on those minutes? I know they've been vetted pretty well.
Yeah, move to approve the minutes of June 27th, 2014, and July 10th, 2014.
I had two little edits on the one of June 27th, which I gave to Diane at the start of the meeting, because she gave me three different versions of June 27th.
As far as I know.
It is, okay.
Yeah.
Very good.
The version that I had no eyes down for me.
No, but then the second time you got it again.
Yeah. Diane fixed that.
So,
Okay.
but there were two other edits, so I'd like to move approval
You got 'em?
with my two edits.
Okay.
They're
Okay, great.
They aren't substantive.
Very good. Do we have a second on those?
Second.
Okay, that's for both sets of minutes,
Yes.
July 10th and June 27th? All in
Yes.
favor? All right, great. We approved some minutes, Diane. You should be very
Diane.
happy.
Well, Amy's back, I'm very happy.
We're almost caught up. Okay. Very good. Do we have any other business?
So, any warrants?
The
Oh, we have warrants. I forgot about the warrants.
They're on the desk.
Oh,
I didn't bring them in.
No, we don't have the warrants with us? All right, then I'm going to take a break while Diane is taking her walk downstairs.
I'm prepared to move approval, even if they're not here.
That's all right.
You can vote.
Yeah, I'd second that, right? I mean, we don't have to approve the big thing, and it's just it's your payroll warrant is what we're approving. I'm
Right,
not
you
sure
can
we have
vote to
do
approve
that.
it. You don't necessarily have to sign it in the meeting, but you have to vote it in the meeting.
So, we'll wait.
But we're in recess for a minute while the,
Chairs.
did he say to keep going, or did he say to stop?
It
I
sounded
think
like
he was
said
just
this.
waiting while Diane went to pick these.
Okay, so we're
Warrants up.
going to wait for Diane to come back. So, for our television viewers, this is the time a commercial should come in.
Be a commercial there.
I'm sure we can
Botany
sign it.
500.
Show.
Just trying to raise revenue.
Okay. So
So
do we
that-
have anything to...
So the town administrator's reviewed the warrant, he's got no objections.
No, I still have to review it. So I would, no, so I would vote it pending my review.
Okay, and I did have an item
Hold.
that I held out.
Yeah, okay.
Okay.
Well, I'm still confused. Do we approve these things or not? Other than his? Payments?
We have to go back online. Are we back online?
Yeah.
Sorry.
All right, so we do have to approve the warrant to pay the town administrator.
Right, move to approve.
Sorry.
Further discussion?
Do you think we should pay the town administrator this week?
Okay. All in favor? Aye, great, good. All right. David's relieved. He thought Paul was going to pull
Well,
a fast one.
we are gonna discuss and come up with sort of our selectmen's policy on
And then under the...
on our involvement in the big stacks.
Right, the new, I thought the new regime was if we wanted to hold something back, we notified you of that and we held it back.
Held it. Yeah, you approve the warrant and hold the item.
But David signs the warrant, right?
Yeah, so we don't really
You don't
approve
have
it.
to, we don't necessarily.
Oh, I
have to
see what
approve
you're
it.
saying. You're just
But-
weighing in on the items to be held.
If
think
we
that's the way
reviewed
the
it,
bylaw works.
but we haven't gotten to the point of, Paul said, so you've reviewed it, but you haven't reviewed it, right?
And we have to,
So so we are going to have a future discussion, I thought, and I had asked for
On
us to have that
process, yeah.
discussion on the process. And an outcome of that process might be that David gives us the Cliff Notes version of what's in the pile of stuff there versus us, us coming in and going through that pile
which we
defeats
just
the
got,
purpose
this
of.
morning or whenever it was.
Yeah, and it defeats the purpose of of giving him the authority to do it.
Right, that's right.
So we're free to do it if we choose to, and we're ultimately responsible. But previously, we were responsible and had the only authority. And so we would review these, and some of us would review them more carefully than at certain times than other times.
Or for different things. But David, so you're now the treasurer. What do we need to do to make these legal for you to pay these bills? Do we have to take a vote? If we have to take
No, as a
vote?
matter of fact, I just need to know which items you wanted to have held.
Okay,
Yeah.
and we have to do that at a meeting, or we can do that between now and whenever you pay this?
I think
I would say if you know of an item that you want held, that you should do that, or
But
say
the-
that you still want more time to review it.
But the article that was approved, or the wording of it, was that one would notify the town administrator of what
Right.
one wanted to be held back. Doesn't have
Doesn't
to
have to take
And
take place
it-
here in this meeting.
And I think it went on to say that it would be
Brought
brought
to a
back
meeting in
for
2 weeks.
discuss- Yeah,
Yeah,
So that
so
was,
that's the process.
that was the item I thought needed to be discussed.
yeah, okay.
But do you understand what I'm talking about, the process of, we're still responsible for the payment. The authority has been granted, but we're still ultimately responsible. And so that's the discussion item for when we talk about process, to determine where our comfort level is.
That's right.
Okay,
So
so we're
I-
just not there. So here we have, again, a little bit of a, we're in the twilight zone here, a little bit on this one, because we don't have a process established or a policy established on the process that we should all follow to ensure that we're comfortable with our responsibility on paying out whatever the $1 million plus that is.
Forward, I think some of that's covered in the bylaw, but how about having the town administrator prepare a process, a proposed process, so we have something in front of us that we can then have an agenda item to see whether we.
What I had
Somebody prepare it, yeah.
what I had recommended was that's why I sent out the Board of Selectmen operating policy, that somehow we should be going through that document and updating it with
So that's in
whatever.
that email I didn't open?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
And did you propose language already, or you
No,
just want to think about
I'm
it?
not
Okay.
sure what.
What we want to do.
what-
So because part of it is, David, the practicality of, in the ideal world, you'll have reviewed that before this meeting and have, one possibility is that you'll have reviewed it before this meeting with some cliff notes of here's what's in there that, we're paying and so forth.
That's probably not going to happen, and
That's right,
based on the
that's
timing
practical.
of them bringing the things down. So it would have to be some sort of heads up from the town accountant, like they identify the ones over, I guess the payments
5,000.
over 5,000.
Yeah.
I would know what items I've put in the warrant, signed off.
When you say that's not going to happen, I understand on payroll, there are time constraints, people have to be paid on a certain day.
Right.
But on ordinary bills, we should be able to get those
We
warrants.
do get them 48 hours in advance.
But we should be able to get them
Yes.
even sooner in advance. There should be plenty of time for you to review them because those bills are known about ahead of time for the most part, or if they just came in, they don't have to be paid right away. And so the idea that we even get them only 48 hours in advance is, we're
It's
getting
a
jammed a
stretch.
little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so, in thinking through the financial processes, I mean, that may be one thing to think
Right.
about. If the Board of Selectmen are going to continue to meet on Thursday and they have to be involved in that, then maybe those are paid on a different day and we get the warrant enough ahead of time to actually have a meaningful review.
Yeah, I don't think anybody had thought through the timing on what that
Well,
review was going to be.
So we're going to have that discussion, and I think that's when we can get
Yeah.
through the details of something like that, because I think you're on to a good approach, and there's probably a highlights on the payroll from the corner office over there that's provided to all of us simultaneously, because that's when the darn thing comes down.
Payroll is almost the easiest part because
That's right. There's
hopefully
nothing out of
nobody's
the
making a
ordinary.
mistake.
That's right.
It's except for a couple times we've looked at overtime issues
right.
where we didn't understand them, but besides that,
Yeah, the
it's
big-
it's a number and it's a number, and unless somebody's messed up, then.
That's right.
But the other stuff, what's the town paying? Why are we paying for this? Or
That's correct.
Which account is it coming out of? That could be important.
That's right. And there's plenty of time in advance of our meeting to look at and summarize.
Okay.
Okay.
Good. Any more business anybody has? Does anybody have any more business?
A recollection
Sure.
came to me that the reason why there's no public record as to who the one director is because there was a $450 or $500 filing fee to file
That's right.
an annual certificate, and so we decided not to
Not
spend
to
the
appoint
money.
anybody. Not to appoint anybody and just.
Well, we did, we appointed somebody, we just didn't record it. We didn't want to spend the money. So the corporation has a director, we just didn't record it.
So the secret director then could presumably file with the Secretary of State and we could reinstate the
Corporation, whenever we need it,
All
yeah.
right, well, we need to talk about that at our next meeting. Okay,
I would move to adjourn.
on that note, I absolutely would accept that motion. All right, all in favor? All right.